Chapter 5083. That fellow isn't a good person. He deserved to die. Someone said gloatingly. They didn't have a good impression of young Master Xian Yun. That guy was so full of himself before, but now he's in such a state. It's really satisfying. A cultivator from the Yao clan said. He didn't feel any sympathy for young Master Xian Yun. He wanted nothing more than for young Master Xian Yun to die quickly. After all, 9 Underworld's Demon Palace had a good relationship with the Heavenly Emperor. They didn't have a good relationship with the Yao race. Thus, the Yao cultivators definitely wouldn't appreciate young Master Xian Yun's kindness. I heard that Feng Yaorao, Little Peng King, and a human cultivator boarded the ancient ship. Young Master Xian Yun had evil thoughts about Feng Yaorao and tried to surround her, but she managed to escape. In order to avoid young Master Xian Yun's pursuit, Feng Yaorao even fled to the mountain range where Time Cave is located. I originally thought that Feng Yaorao would die in there, but I didn't expect her to come out alive. My guess is that young Master Xian Yun might have seen Feng Yaorao and the others on the spirit ship. I wonder if young Master Xian Yun's decision to jump off the ship is related to Feng Yaorao and the others? A cultivator spoke up, speculating about the possible course of events that happened. I also saw Feng Yaorao and the others. However, although Little Peng King and Feng Yaorao's cultivation bases are quite good, they are definitely not a match for young Master Xian Yun. As for the other person, he is a young human cultivator. That young human cultivator is even less likely to be a match for young Master Xian Yun. Thus, my guess is that young Master Xian Yun's decision to jump off the ship has nothing to do with Feng Yaorao and the others. Or perhaps young Master Xian Yun offended someone he couldn't afford to offend. The cultivators on the other spirit ships were guessing the reason for young Master Xian Yun's decision to jump off the ship. The cultivators on the spirit ship Lin Feng looked at Lin Feng with reverence. Many female cultivators looked at Lin Feng affectionately. Lin Feng was simply too strong. Male cultivators revered him and female cultivators admired him. In this world where the strong were revered, a young, handsome, and powerful cultivator like Lin Feng was simply a killer of female cultivators. With a flick of his finger, a group of beautiful female cultivators would come over. For example, there were many beautiful female cultivators on the spirit ship. He looked at Lin Feng. It was like a big bad wolf looking at a little lamb. At this moment, those ferocious beasts had already swum to young Master Xian Yun's side and started attacking him. Young Master Xian Yun took out a battle spear and fought with the beasts. Not long after, the corpses of the ferocious beasts appeared one after another. Those ferocious beasts were all killed by young Master Xian Yun. Young Master Xian Yun. He was really powerful. Soon, the dead ferocious beasts were dragged into the water by other ferocious beasts. The ferocious beasts then ate the corpses of the dead ferocious beasts. Many people couldn't help but mutter. This kind of fierce beast was truly ferocious. They even ate the flesh of creatures of the same race. It could be seen how inhumane these beasts were. Although young Master Xian Yun was powerful, there were simply too many ferocious beasts. After killing more than 10 ferocious beasts, young Master Xian Yun was still dragged into the water by a ferocious beast. Then, there was no more movement in that area. Young Master Xian Yun couldn't have been eaten by a ferocious beast, right? A cultivator said, "That can't be. He's an existence that can fight against a true immortal. Did he die just like that?" Someone said in disbelief. Another cultivator said, "What's so impossible about that? Those ferocious beasts are simply too powerful. Although their individual combat strength is inferior to young Master Xian Yun's, there are simply too many of them. With so many ferocious beasts attacking young Master Xian Yun together, young Master Xian Yun would have a hard time dealing with them. Not to mention, young Master Xian Yun's movements are greatly restricted in the pool. Young Master Xian Yun's combat strength can't be fully unleashed. Therefore, it's not surprising that those ferocious beasts were able to kill young Master Xian Yun. This cultivator's words won the approval of many people. After young Master Xian Yun was dragged into the water, there was no more movement. This was the best proof. Guys, look over there at that moment. A cultivator pointed to a spot in the distance. That area was more than 1,000 meters away from the shore. Numerous ferocious beasts' corpses floated out. There were nearly 100 ferocious beasts' corpses floating on the surface of the water. A cultivator floated out of the pool and quickly swam towards the shore. In the distance, many ferocious beasts surged over and pounced towards that cultivator. However, that cultivator's swimming speed was extremely fast. It wouldn't take long for him to reach the shore. At that time, those ferocious beasts wouldn't be able to do anything to him. That cultivator was none other than young Master Xian Yun. He was none other than young Master Xian Yun, who was dragged into the water by the ferocious beasts. That guy actually didn't die. Naturally, after a series of battles, young Master Xian Yun's injuries were also quite serious. However, these injuries were nothing to young Master Xian Yun. He would be able to recover quickly, as expected of young Master Xian Yun. Back then, he went to the celestial realm to cultivate for a period of time. His cultivation is truly formidable. He actually managed to kill so many ferocious beasts in the water. Young Master Xian Yun's combat strength is definitely not something an ordinary true immortal can compare to. Some cultivators sighed emotionally. He's really strong. Such strength at such a young age. His future is limitless. Another cultivator chimed in. Someone said, no matter how strong young Master Xian Yun is, wasn't he still forced to jump off the boat? Many people smiled bitterly. It was indeed as that cultivator had said. Young Master Xian Yun was strong. He was forced to jump off the boat. Many people felt like their hearts were being scratched by a cat. They really wanted to know, who exactly was it? Who forced young Master Xian Yun into such a state? At this moment, young Master Xian Yun's eyes were filled with excitement as he looked at the shore, getting closer and closer. He was finally about to reach the shore. Young Master Xian Yun couldn't help but think to himself that when he recovered, he would definitely find an expert. He would capture Lin Feng. Then, he would ruthlessly torture Lin Feng. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to vent his hatred. The ferocious beasts behind him were very fast, but they could no longer catch up to young Master Xian Yun. Finally, young Master Xian Yun rushed to the shore. He hurriedly climbed up. When those ferocious beasts saw young Master Xian Yun coming ashore, they couldn't help but roar angrily. However, those ferocious beasts couldn't reach the shore. In the end, they turned back. A group of ferocious beasts quickly swam towards the ferocious beast corpses floating in the pool. They couldn't eat young Master Xian Yun. They could only eat the corpses of their companions. Young Master Xian Yun glared at the spirit ship that Lin Feng was on with hatred. Then he turned around and left. However, at this moment, a sword chi flew out from the void. Then it slashed towards young Master Xian Yun. Young Master Xian Yun's expression changed drastically. He wanted to dodge, but the sword chi was simply too fast. Young Master Xian Yun didn't have time to dodge the sword chi's attack. Pooh! In the next moment, young Master Xian Yun's head was chopped off by the sword chi. Blood. Chapter 5084. Dead. Young Noble Xian Yun is dead. Who killed young, noble Xian Yun? Was it the cultivator who forced young Master Xian Yun to jump off the spirit ship? Who killed him? Daring to kill young, noble Xian Yun? How audacious! Nine Nether Devil Palace isn't a simple power. Anyone who dares to offend them won't have a good ending. Isn't that so? Nine Nether Devil Palace is terrifying. Anyone who offends them will die. But now, not only did that cultivator offend Nine Nether Devil Palace, he even killed young noble Xian Yun. How audacious! After seeing young noble Xian Yun's death, many people couldn't help but discuss. His death caused a huge commotion, mainly because his identity was too sensitive. Among the younger generation of Nine Nether Devil Palace, young noble Xian Yun could be considered the number 3, second only to young noble Xian Yu and young noble Shui Yu. However, now that young Master Xian Yun was killed just like that, everyone knew that the Nine Nether Devil Palace would never let this matter rest. This force was originally a Devil Dao force, and had always been ruthless. It was fine if they killed others, but if the cultivators of their sect were killed, the Nine Nether Devil Palace would definitely launch a crazy revenge. Lin Feng's ship was very different from the others. The cultivators on the other ships were discussing this matter, but Lin Feng's ship was very quiet. No one spoke because they were worried that they would say the wrong thing and anger Lin Feng. They didn't know Lin Feng very well. Lin Feng wasn't a bloodthirsty person. However, Lin Feng wouldn't show mercy to those who went too far. Of course, in fact, the cultivators on the ship didn't see Lin Feng kill young noble Xian Yun. However, they knew that it was definitely Lin Feng's doing. Perhaps it was because Lin Feng was too strong. He could kill young, noble Xian Yun without anyone noticing. This was how terrifying and powerful Lin Feng was. After killing young, noble Xian Yun, Lin Feng returned to his original seat as if nothing had happened. Many people wanted to befriend Lin Feng. However, they didn't know Lin Feng's temper. Thus, they didn't dare to rashly disturb Lin Feng. The ship quickly moved deeper into the sea. There were still many powerful fierce beasts following behind the ship, ready to attack any cultivators who fell into the water. However, they didn't attack the ship. It seemed that the intelligence of those beasts was extremely high. They knew that they couldn't break through the ship's defenses. So they didn't do such useless things. 3 days later, the ship arrived Xian Nether Devil Palace. Xian Yun. It extended for 10 miles. It formed a special kind of energy that prevented cultivators from moving forward. If they dared to approach the stone tower, that special energy would cause great damage to cultivators. A spirit ship tried to approach. However, the spirit ship suffered a heavy blow. The defensive restrictions of the spirit ship were almost destroyed. If they hadn't retreated quickly, the spirit ship would definitely have been destroyed. When the time came, the cultivators on the spirit ship would probably die under the claws of the fierce beasts in the pool. Lin Feng, Little Rock King, and Feng Yarao came outside and looked at the stone tower. When they saw the many pictures on the stone tower, Lin Feng couldn't help but frown slightly. There were densely packed pictures carved on the stone tower. Upon closer inspection, those pictures were actually formed by countless skull patterns. It was extremely strange. Is this the stone tower left behind by the demons? Lin Feng couldn't help but mutter to himself. He felt that perhaps it was really the stone tower left behind by the demons. Because how could a stone tower left behind by a normal cultivator have so many skull runes carved on it? Those skeletal runes were simply too bizarre. Lin Feng tried to comprehend those skull runes, but there was an invisible force blocking Lin Feng from sensing those skull runes. Lin Feng couldn't sense the skull runes. This made him very surprised. Demon Lord, what do you think of that stone tower? Lin Feng sent a voice transmission to the Demon Lord. Lin Feng didn't get a reply from the Demon Lord. It seemed that the Demon Lord was still in seclusion. When the Demon Lord was in seclusion, he would cut off his connection with the outside world. Therefore, the Demon Lord couldn't hear Lin Feng's voice transmission. "Sacred Martin Immortal, do you know the stone tower?" asked Lin Feng telepathically. He felt that the Sacred Martin Immortal was knowledgeable and might know some secrets of the stone tower. "I don't know." The Sacred Martin Immortal's answer was very simple. Lin Feng pursed his lips. He didn't pay any more attention to it. "It's the evil ancestor's tower." At that moment, a voice suddenly rang out in Lin Feng's mind. It was the Supreme Demon Iron's voice. It had awakened. Lin Feng asked with interest, "Evil ancestor's tower? Was it forged by a certain evil ancestor?" "Evil ancestor. Evil god. Were they all titled gods?" The titled gods of the era, generations of evil ancestors and evil gods, had passed down this titled god. It was passed down, but in the end, it was still destroyed in the immemorial era. Titled god. Since then, it had become history. However, whether it was the evil ancestor or evil god, they had all been glorious in the past. The things they had left behind must have been incomparably heaven-defying. For example, the stone tower in front of him gave Lin Feng a feeling that it was very extraordinary. It should be something left behind by the second or third generation evil ancestor. I don't know the specifics, but I've heard people talk about the stone tower in the past. Rumor has it that the evil ancestor died, and his blood spilled all over the stone tower. From then on, the stone tower has a spirit, and it seems to be looking for its master. Whenever it appears, it will appear again. The stone tower is looking for its master. Lin Feng was very surprised. "Yes," the Supreme Demon Iron said. "The stone tower was a top-grade stone tool in the past, and after devouring the evil ancestor's blood, it must have undergone a transformation. Its current power is probably many times greater than when it was at its peak. If you can obtain the evil ancestor's stone tower, it will definitely be a heaven-defying aid." Lin Feng nodded. He naturally agreed with the Supreme Demon Iron's words. Lin Feng naturally agreed. He just didn't know who would obtain the stone tower in the end. If possible, Lin Feng also wanted to obtain the stone tower, but Lin Feng knew that it wasn't something he could obtain just because he wanted to. He needed the stone tower's approval. Chapter 5085. In the next few days, many spirit ships arrived one after another. After those spirit ships arrived, they all stopped in the periphery. It seems that the number of cultivators who heard about the stone pagoda was not small. Lin Feng also didn't know if the Fire Qilin had mixed in with one of the spirit ships. The Fire Qilin had a formidable cultivation and was proficient in transformation techniques. If it used its transformation technique to mix in with some of the spirit ships, it could easily cover the sky and the sea. Wanting to find the whereabouts of the Fire Qilin would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens. As for the whereabouts of Little Moon and Princess Shui Yao, Lin Feng was also very concerned about them. He hoped that the two of them had also come here. At that time, he would be able to meet them here. Of course, it would be a very happy thing. 10 days later, hundreds of spirit ships had already gathered here. The number of cultivators who came here was really high. At this time, another spirit ship rushed over from the distance. The surface area of this spirit ship was not particularly large, only about a dozen meters long. Such a spirit ship attracted the attention of many vicious beasts. Many vicious beasts rushed towards the spirit ship and then slammed into the spirit ship, wanting to destroy the spirit ship. But at this time, the spirit ship swept out an extremely terrifying light beam and bombarded the vicious beasts. Puff, puff, the sound of flesh tearing came out. Many of the vicious beasts besieging the spirit ship suffered serious injuries. The bodies of those spirit beasts were torn apart. Blood suddenly dyed the pool red. Many vicious beasts died, but many vicious beasts also escaped with injuries. Seeing the terrifying power of the spirit ship, many people felt very surprised. What a powerful spirit ship! They didn't know who had forged it. Lin Feng couldn't help but raise his eyebrows slightly. This spirit ship was much more powerful than his Xianyuan ancient starry sky ship. But in fact, today, Lin Feng's Xianyuan ancient starry sky ship was no longer the top spirit ship. Of course, this didn't mean that the Xianyuan ancient starry sky ship wasn't powerful enough. In fact, it was still very powerful. Even if it couldn't enter the ranks of the top spirit ships, it could still enter the second rank. The materials used to construct the Xianyuan ancient starry sky ship were very high grade. The main reason was that the array formations on it weren't strong enough. Many of the array formations had already been damaged. The main reason was because of its age. After Lin Feng broke through to the true immortal realm, he would add new array formations to the Xianyuan ancient starry sky ship. At this moment, the spirit ship directly rushed towards the stone pagoda. After seeing this scene, many cultivators couldn't help but frown. A strange and terrifying power enveloped the area around the stone tower. Any magic weapon, cultivator, or anything else that dared to approach that area would suffer an extremely fierce attack. Rashly approaching would not end well. However, the spirit ship had directly rushed over. Its target was extremely clear. It seemed that the master of the spirit ship was extremely confident in his ability to deal with it. Could that spirit ship really contend against the strange and terrifying power around the stone pagoda? Lin Feng didn't think so. As for the rest of the cultivators, they also didn't think so. At this moment, the spirit ship rushed into the area covered by the strange and terrifying power. A flag flew out from the spirit ship. It was a flag with a skull drawn on it. By now, the flag looked somewhat shabby. However, when the flag flew out, something unbelievable happened. The strange and terrifying power that lingered around the stone pagoda did not attack the spirit ship. After seeing this, many people looked as though they had seen a ghost. That broken flag is related to the stone pagoda. A cultivator immediately said, "Indeed, that flag should be related to the stone pagoda." This was also the reason why the strange and terrifying power surrounding the stone pagoda didn't attack the spirit ship after the broken flag appeared. The spirit ship was very fast. Many people couldn't help but feel anxious because the owner of the spirit ship would soon reach the stone pagoda. The others couldn't go over. He was the only one who could go over. When the time came, all kinds of opportunities. Wouldn't they all be taken by that person? If that was the case, wouldn't they have been happy for nothing? After thinking about this, many people immediately felt their mood become very bad. A few spirit ships also moved out, trying to get close to the stone pagoda. However, those spirit ships were attacked by the strange and terrifying power. One by one, the spirit ships were damaged to various degrees. One of the spirit ships was severely damaged. Most of the restrictions were destroyed. The hull of the ship was also damaged. So, that spirit ship was attacked by many vicious beasts. When those vicious beasts swarmed and surrounded the spirit ship was quickly destroyed by the vicious beasts. Hundreds of cultivators on the ship fell into the pool. Those cultivators engaged in a great battle with the vicious beasts. Many cultivators were killed by the vicious beasts. A small number of people were rescued by other spirit ships. Only then did they escape disaster. We can't get close. We have to have the token to get close, a cultivator said with a gloomy expression. However, no matter how depressed they were, no matter how unwilling they were to accept this situation. Now, they had to accept it even if they didn't want to. Finally, the spirit ship came to the side of the stone pagoda. A cultivator walked out of the spirit ship. It was a cultivator who looked very young. He was wearing a gray robe. That handsome face looked very evil. When the cultivator came to the side of the stone pagoda, he turned his head and looked at the cultivators on the spirit ship outside. Then, the corner of his mouth curved into a mocking smile. He's mocking us. Who is this person? How dare he be so arrogant? Courting death, courting death. This guy is simply courting death. If I catch him, I will definitely grind his bones to dust. The cultivators in the outer area roared angrily. Originally, being unable to reach the stone pagoda was already very troublesome. Now, they were even mocked and despised. Naturally, their mood became even worse. Each one of them was filled with killing intent. They couldn't wait to kill that evil young cultivator immediately. Remember my name. At this time, the young cultivator opened his mouth and said, this guy was really quite arrogant. After despising everyone, he still wanted everyone to remember his name. Chapter 5086. My name is Xiezi, the son of the great Tao born from the evil path. The evil young master said, your whole family is evil. Brat, you can continue to act cool now. When you come out later, see how we'll deal with you. A cultivator said coldly, no matter how strong you are, there is always someone stronger. You got your opportunity, but you shouldn't mock us. Even if you get your opportunity, you won't be able to leave. Another cultivator coldly said, although the spirit ships were very noisy, it was still difficult to cover up the cultivator's voice. Clearly, this cultivator was very strong. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to let his voice spread out like this. Xiezi mocked everyone, causing them to be angry, but it was obvious that he did it on purpose. Stupid and ignorant. Xiezi continued, still with a high and mighty attitude. Little Rock King was rubbing his teeth. He said, why is this guy asking for a beating? Now, even I want to teach him a lesson. Lin Feng also had the same feeling. This guy really deserved a beating. Young Master Xianyu, and the others were all high and mighty figures. However, no matter how high their attitude was, they wouldn't provoke and humiliate a large number of cultivators. How many people would they offend? But Xiezi dared to do so. You're called Xiezi, right? A cultivator asked loudly. Are you deaf? Xiezi said with a sneer. My name is Xie Father, and I was the one who created the evil path. Since you're Xiezi, then, according to seniority, you have to call me grandfather. The cultivator continued to shout loudly. After hearing what the cultivator had to say, Yi Zichen nodded. Many people were stunned at first. Then they laughed out loud. This guy's mouth was really sarcastic, especially when those cultivators saw that Xiezi's expression had become incomparably gloomy. They became even happier. It was true. That was a very satisfying thing. Weren't you very arrogant? Weren't you very arrogant? Didn't you look down on everyone? Didn't you call yourself the son of the great Tao? Now you're being mocked, right? Lin Feng saw the cultivator who spoke. It was a cultivator who looked to be in his 30s. He was tall and sturdy, and he had a head of fiery red hair. When he saw that cultivator, Lin Feng was slightly taken aback. Fire Qilin. Lin Feng's mouth twitched violently, even though the Fire Qilin had taken on the appearance of a human. However, Lin Feng would never forget his aura. Lin Feng was sure. This guy was the Fire Qilin. He is a Fire Qilin? It can't be? Feng, Yarao said in astonishment. Obviously, she didn't sense the Fire Qilin's aura from the red-haired man. Fire Qilin. This fellow still dared to swagger around when he was being hunted down by the four great immortal sects. If he didn't have any ability, how could he dare to do such a thing? Therefore, this guy must have cultivated a method to change his own aura. However, Feng Yaorao's perception wasn't as powerful as his. Therefore, he was unable to sense the true aura of the fire Qilin. Whether it's a fire Qilin or not, we'll know once we see what's around that guy. Lin Feng said. Through the crowd, Feng Yaorao saw the two female cultivators behind the fire Qilin. At first, the two female cultivators were blocked by the fire Qilin's huge body. Thus, Feng Yaorao didn't see them. But now, Feng Yaorao saw them. Among the two women, one of them was like an immortal with a noble temperament. It was Princess Shui Yao. The other person had a strange look. It was Little Moon. Now, Little Moon had grown up. She was slender and elegant. A woman changes 18 times between childhood and womanhood. The more she grows, the more beautiful she becomes. After seeing these two people, Feng Yaorao was naturally able to confirm the identity of the fire Qilin. Feng Yaorao said, "Fire Qilin's methods are truly extraordinary to be able to deceive everyone." Lin Feng said, "Of course, the fire Qilin's ability is very high. Back then, when I was still very weak, this guy's cultivation was already very strong. If it wasn't for the sacred Emperor Stone devouring his divine power, he would definitely be even stronger now." At this time, Xia Zi, who had been taken advantage of by the fire Qilin, coldly said, "I'll remember you. Pray that you don't fall into my hands." The fire Qilin said disdainfully, "Do you think I'm afraid of you? If you have the guts, come and fight me one-on-one right now." When many people heard the fire Qilin's words, they couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Do you really think he's stupid? Why would he come at this time? Xiezi ignored the fire Qilin. This guy began to chant an incantation. While chanting the incantation, he also released a series of runes. Those were runes. All of them surged into the broken flag. The broken flag shook and released a series of violent fluctuations. Rays of divine light. They flew out from the broken flag. Then, they shone on the stone tower. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Suddenly, the stone tower changed. The stone tower began to shake violently. Moreover, an earth-shattering sound rang out. That kind of sound. It was like thunder. It shook the void. The stone tower has changed. A cultivator cried out in alarm. Everyone turned to look at the stone tower. The stone tower was slowly rising from the pool. It seemed like it was going to come out of the pool. The stone tower was rising very quickly. It didn't take long. It completely flew out of the pool. The stone tower floated in midair. It was about 1,000 meters high. What a spectacular sight! After seeing the stone tower, many cultivators sighed. Although the stone tower wasn't particularly tall, it had a special aura. It was a sense of oppression that was as majestic as a mountain. When many people faced the stone tower, there was a huge pressure. Seeing the stone tower completely fly out, Xiezi was also very happy. He continued to chant the incantation. Then, he released a series of runes. Those runes, they all merged into the broken flag. The tattered flag quickly disintegrated into skeleton runes. The skeletal runes flew towards the stone door. Those skeleton runes all merged into the stone door. And on the stone door, a huge skull appeared. "Please open the stone door. Xiezi has come to inherit everything left behind by the evil ancestor." Xiezi said. When Xiezi's voice fell, the huge skull on top of the stone door actually spoke human language. "Xiezi has arrived. The stone door is open." After the skull's voice fell, a loud rumbling sound was heard. The stone door shook violently. With the shaking of the stone door, the entire stone tower shook violently. Chapter 5087. The door to the stone pagoda gradually opened, making Xiezi extremely excited. The gazes of the cultivators in the distance were extremely gloomy. They watched as Xiezi obtained all the opportunities one by one. However, they obtained nothing. This feeling was naturally incomparably terrible. However, there was nothing they could do about it. Those opportunities were destined to have nothing to do with them. Lin Feng suddenly thought of what the supreme demon, Iron, had said before. The evil ancestor's blood spilled over the stone pagoda. The stone pagoda was undergoing a transformation, waiting for the arrival of a new master. It seemed this new master was Xiezi. This kind of thing was something that others couldn't be envious of. There were many opportunities between heaven and earth, and there would always be some lucky people who would be able to obtain some extraordinary opportunities. After grasping those great opportunities, these cultivators would be able to rise to the top. A proud son of heaven, like Xiezi, his cultivation was already extremely powerful, so he would always be able to obtain the favor of many great opportunities. Then he would become more and more powerful, and people would have to look up to him. It wasn't unreasonable for him to be so arrogant, mainly because he was too powerful. With such a powerful cultivation, it was normal for him to be a little arrogant. Young people who were successful were more arrogant. After all, there were only a few people who could keep a low profile. In the end, the stone door opened a gap of more than a meter. Then, the stone door no longer opened. However, this gap was enough for Xiezi to enter. Xiezi jumped out of the spirit ship and directly entered the stone door. Then, he put away the spirit ship. The surrounding cultivators didn't leave either. Many people were even thinking of waiting for Xiezi to come out before besieging him. The main reason was that Xiezi was too hateful, humiliating everyone. This caused many cultivators to have killing intent towards Xiezi. So, many cultivators didn't want to let go of any chance to kill Xiezi. And if they could kill Xiezi, they would be able to obtain a lot of benefits. So why not? Ideals were beautiful. However, whether or not these ideals could become reality was still hard to say. Everyone continued to wait outside. Someone said, "Everyone, do you feel that the strange and terrifying power around the stone pagoda is constantly weakening?" Hearing this, many people carefully sensed it, and then revealed looks of joy. Because of that strange power, it was really dissipating. If they waited until that strange power completely dissipated, then everyone could enter the stone tower. That's great. Once we enter the tower, we'll definitely kill that guy. Some cultivators laughed excitedly. About half an hour passed. That strange power had really disappeared. Everyone's face lit up with joy. When that strange power disappeared, everyone even discovered that the pool was no longer an area where magic power was confined. Everyone regained the ability to fly, which made many people extremely happy. One cultivator after another soared into the sky and quickly flew towards the stone tower. A large number of cultivators entered the stone tower. Lin Feng, Little Peng King, and Feng Yaorao were not in a hurry to enter the stone pagoda. They were waiting for the Fire Qilin, Little Moon, and Princess Shui Yao to arrive. The Fire Qilin, Little Moon, and Princess Shui Yao did not see Lin Feng and the other two as they flew directly towards the stone tower. Lin Feng and the other two appeared before them. "Ha ha ha ha, I didn't expect to see you here." After seeing Lin Feng, the Fire Qilin suddenly laughed. Little Moon was very excited. Lin Feng had saved Little Moon's life in the past. Therefore, Little Moon had a very special feeling of closeness to Lin Feng. "Big Brother Feng." Little Moon flew over with a very happy smile. "You're becoming more and more beautiful." Lin Feng smiled. After hearing Lin Feng's praise, Little Moon became even happier. Princess Shui Yao said, Lin Gongzi, it's been many years since we last met. How have you been? Lin Feng said, Not bad. I happened to pass by the ancient demon domain, so I came to see you. Seeing that you're all well, I'm relieved. Let's enter the stone tower and take a look. Although it's very likely that the stone tower has recognized Xie Zi as its master, I think that it hasn't officially recognized Xie Zi as its master yet. We can go inside and see if there are any opportunities. If the stone tower recognizes Xie Zi as its master, it'll be very difficult to snatch those opportunities. Hearing this, the others nodded. They did not stay outside. They all flew towards the stone tower. Very quickly, they entered the stone tower. Lin Feng summoned Dragon Rabbit and said to it, Little guy, sense it and see if there are any good treasures. Take us there now. Dragon Rabbit had already undergone 5 transformations, and its perception of treasures had become even stronger. Therefore, let Dragon Rabbit find the whereabouts of the treasures. It was definitely an excellent choice. Whoosh! Dragon Rabbit was extremely fast, and it directly rushed upwards. Lin Feng and the others followed closely behind Dragon Rabbit, heading towards the top of the stone tower. The stone tower was divided into many levels. Each level was divided into many rooms. Most of the rooms were sealed by restrictions, and it was unknown what was in those rooms. Many cultivators were breaking the restrictions in the rooms. Even the aggressive cultivators who wanted to kill Xie Zi were trying to break the restrictive spells at this moment. How could they have the time to care about Xie Zi? They did not know where Xie Zi had run off to. Looking for Xie Zi was simply a waste of time. The most important thing was to find opportunities that could be seen. Everyone was very clear about this, and these people, they all did the same. There were also very powerful restrictions between the levels. For example, the restrictions between the first and second levels were very powerful. However, there were many cultivators with extraordinary abilities, so when Lin Feng and the others arrived, the restrictions between the first and second levels had already been broken. They went all the way to the 36th floor. The restrictions between the levels had all been broken. The restrictions between the 36th floor and the 37th floor had yet to be broken. Dozens of cultivators were working together to discuss how to break the restrictions. Given time, they would definitely be able to break that restriction. Lin Feng used his mana to wrap around Feng Yaorao, Little Rock King, Fire Qilin, Little Moon, Princess Shui Yao, and the others. Then he used the inheritance of the Celestial Master's lineage. They quickly rushed into the restrictions. This was the terrifying part of the Celestial Master's lineage. Lin Feng could travel through many restrictions. Everyone arrived at the 37th floor. The Fire Qilin clicked its tongue in wonder and said, Speaking of which, the inheritance of the Celestial Master's lineage is really awesome. Lin Feng and the others continued to head upwards. Finally, their group arrived at the 49th floor. This floor did not have many rooms like the other floors. There was only one huge hall here. Moreover, Chapter 5088, in the depths, there was a huge altar. There were more than a dozen things placed on the altar, and those things were surrounded by evil light. He didn't know what they were for the time being, but Lin Feng guessed. Those things were most likely treasures left behind by the evil ancestor. That evil ancestor was so powerful, the things he left behind, the value must be incomparably precious. On the altar, there was also a stone statue of the evil ancestor. After Lin Feng and the others entered, Xie Zi did not pay any attention to them. He knelt in front of the evil ancestor's stone statue and kept muttering something. Obviously, right now, it should be a rather important moment for Xie Zi. Perhaps he was carrying out some kind of special ritual. After this ritual was completed, Xie Zi would be able to control the stone pagoda. At that time, Xie Zi would be the new owner of the stone pagoda. Therefore, Xie Zi ignored Lin Feng and the others who had entered the 49th floor. Attack! Lin Feng said. He took out his era war spear and directly charged towards Xie Zi. As soon as it came up, Lin Feng displayed his strongest fighting strength. He wanted to get rid of Xie Zi as soon as possible. Every minute that was delayed, for Lin Feng and the others, it was an extremely bad thing. If Xie Zi controlled the stone pagoda, it would be an extremely terrible thing. Fire Unicorn, Little Rock King, and the others also made their moves. Together with Lin Feng, they charged towards Xie Zi. Right now, Xie Zi was carrying out this special ritual. It was a great opportunity to kill Xie Zi. Miss this opportunity. Perhaps it would be very difficult to find another opportunity like this. So, he had to seize this opportunity. However, when Lin Feng and the others arrived in front of Xie Zi, a huge light barrier suddenly formed around Xie Zi's body, and that light barrier protected Xie Zi within. Facing the attacks of Lin Feng and the others, that huge light barrier rebounded with a powerful force. That powerful force directly shook the bodies of Lin Feng and the others. It directly sent Lin Feng and the others flying. What a terrifying power! Everyone couldn't help but be shocked. *CK. I don't believe that I can't destroy this barrier. The Fire Qilin cursed loudly. He held a blood-colored broadsword in his hand and slashed out again. It was the same as before. The Fire Qilin was sent flying again. Both of his hands were shattered. Blood immediately flowed out. This infuriated the Fire Qilin. Lin Feng said that light barrier was most likely condensed by the stone tower. Let's not worry about that light barrier for now and collect the treasures on the altar. After we collect those treasures, we'll immediately leave. The others nodded in agreement. Everyone quickly flew towards the altar. However, when they tried to collect the treasures, the stone statue on the altar actually opened its eyes. After that, the statue slapped its palm towards Lin Feng and the others. The stone statue of the evil ancestor was truly terrifying to the extreme. That palm strike contained an unimaginably terrifying power. No matter who it was, after receiving that terrifying palm strike, they would turn pale with fright. Lin Feng knew they had to end the battle quickly. If they waited until Xie Zi grasped the stone pagoda, they would be in danger. This was because they were now in the inner world of the stone tower. This kind of place, it had a relatively large suppressive effect on Lin Feng and the others. Therefore, at this moment, they had to be extremely careful in dealing with the situation in front of them. Lin Feng attacked with all his strength. The golden dwarf, the ruler's armor, the magic lotus, the sacred bone, and the external incarnation's power had completely fused with his body. When these powers fused with his body, Lin Feng immediately felt that his power had risen to the peak. Break! He couldn't help but shout loudly. His spear pierced towards the energy palm that had condensed in the void. The attacks of both sides collided. It was difficult to separate them. The attack of the evil ancestor's stone statue was terrifying. "We'll help you," the Fire Qilin shouted loudly. He quickly rushed over, and powerful magic power poured into Lin Feng's body. Feng Yaorao, Little Peng King, Princess Shui Yao, and Little Moon also attacked. Powerful magic power. It also poured into Lin Feng's body. After receiving the support of their magic power, Lin Feng immediately became energetic. After Lin Feng transformed the magic power, it all turned into magic power that could be used freely. Lin Feng continuously poured the magic power into the epic war spear. After the powerful magic power was integrated, the epic war spear's aura suddenly became more and more terrifying. Its power also became stronger and stronger. "Break for me!" Lin Feng roared loudly. He held the epic war spear with his left hand and slapped the end of the spear with his right hand. The epic war spear's power increased again, and it directly shattered the attack of the evil ancestor's stone statue. Then Lin Feng waved his hand, and powerful magic power poured out, sweeping towards the treasures on the altar. But at this time, the treasures on the altar actually flew in all directions. "Hurry up and collect them," Lin Feng said. The fire Qilin and the others locked onto a treasure and chased after it. Lin Feng took out the swallowing heaven jar. He planned to use it to collect the treasures. The swallowing heaven jar. It released an extremely terrifying devouring power. The treasures were swallowed by the swallowing heaven jar one by one. The swallowing heaven jar continuously swallowed 3 treasures. The fire Qilin and the others also collected a treasure at this time. Lin Feng planned to continue controlling the swallowing heaven jar to collect the other treasures. Suddenly, an evil light shot out from the evil ancestor's stone statue. The evil light surged into Xiezi's body. Xiezi opened his eyes. His aura instantly underwent a tremendous change. Xiezi officially became the master of the stone pagoda. Moreover, after becoming the master of the stone pagoda, Xiezi had obviously gained a lot of benefits. His battle strength had probably increased greatly. "All of you deserve to die." Xiezi's cold eyes looked at Lin Feng and the others. He kept the remaining treasures. Then, he slapped the fire Qilin. "Damn, why did you attack me first?" The fire Qilin could not help but shout gloomily. Xiezi attacked the fire Qilin first because the fire Qilin had mocked Xiezi outside. Xiezi remembered this grudge. So, he wanted to kill the fire Qilin first. The fire Qilin did not dare to be careless. It quickly blocked Xiezi's attack. Facing Xiezi's powerful attack, the fire Qilin also struck out with its palm, endless flames lingering in its palm. The power of the fire Qilin's attack was quite tyrannical. Bang! The next moment, accompanied by the sound of a violent collision, the fire Qilin and Xiezi fiercely collided. The fire Qilin's attack was instantly broken by Xiezi, and he was sent flying, spitting out a mouthful of blood in midair. Chapter 5089. Xiezi locked onto the fire Qilin and quickly charged towards it, wanting to kill it. The fire Qilin's expression changed greatly. It wanted to get rid of Xiezi, but it was unable to do so. However, at this moment, Lin Feng appeared between the fire Qilin and Xiezi. He slapped Xiezi with his palm. Bang! The sound of a violent collision was heard. Lin Feng and Xiezi's palms collided. Both sides were evenly matched. Lin Feng shouted in a deep voice, "I'll cover the rear. You guys retreat first." Hearing this, everyone nodded. They also knew that Xiezi was powerful. Now, Xiezi controlled the stone tower. If they continued to stay here, they wouldn't be of any help to Lin Feng. So, leaving now was the best choice. This way, they wouldn't be a burden to Lin Feng. "Be careful," Feng Yaorao said. "Big brother Feng, you must be careful." Little Moon reminded him. Little Rock King, Princess Shui Yao, and the fire Qilin also warned Lin Feng to be careful. Then, they quickly rushed downstairs. "Who are you?" Xiezi looked at Lin Feng and asked. With his current battle strength, he was actually unable to do anything to Lin Feng. This made Xiezi feel that it was very inconceivable. Previously, Xiezi had fought with one of the 8 great young masters. The 8 great young masters could only fight to a draw with him. However, it was obvious that Lin Feng was definitely not one of the 8 great young masters. "And who are you?" Lin Feng asked. "The child of the great Tao, Xie." Xie said, "Speak human." Lin Feng said indifferently. Xie's eyes suddenly revealed a sinister look. He sneered and said, "Stupid people always think that what others say is not the truth." Lin Feng said indifferently, "I think that stupid people are the kind of people who find a lame excuse to deceive others and still think that what they say is true. For example, you are such a person." He. Xie smiled coldly and walked towards Lin Feng step by step. He said, "You're quite strong, so if you kneel down and pledge your loyalty to me, I'll spare your life. If you don't know how to appreciate my kindness, you'll die today." "Really? I'd like to see if you have the ability to say such words to me." Lin Feng replied indifferently. He quickly rushed towards Xie and then blasted a palm at Xie. Lin Feng's palm strike was even more powerful than his previous attacks. Xie sneered. Similarly, he struck out with his palm. Bang! Along with the violent collision sound, the two sides collided again. This time, both sides were still evenly matched. Xie was terrifying. He hadn't used his full strength, yet Lin Feng could sense that. Of course, Lin Feng also did not use his full strength. But even so, Lin Feng's heart was still filled with shock and emotion. With his current accumulation, it was difficult to suppress Xie, and Xie was also very young. Who was this guy? Even compared to the 8 great young masters of the Undying Realm, Xie was not bad at all, and Xie was much younger than the 8 great young masters of the Undying Realm. Even compared to Lin Feng, he was not much older. Lin Feng had never heard of such a terrifying existence before. Xie was not the kind of person who kept a low profile. His character was very high profile. How could someone with such a high-profile personality be unknown to the public? This was what made people feel puzzled. Could it be that he was the so-called child of the great Tao? Xie did not have parents. Born in the great Tao. It sounded like. Why was it so unbelievable? Lin Feng thought Xie was very likely to be a self-sealing divine stone, an existence that was born not long ago. Although I have many methods to deal with you, I have just become the owner of the stone pagoda today. I have decided to use the stone pagoda to deal with you. It's a good opportunity to test the power of the stone pagoda. Xie said. As his voice fell, he formed a seal with both hands, and the stone pagoda shook violently. Lin Feng saw. Dense runes appeared on the inner walls of the stone pagoda. Those were runes. They shot out powerful beams of light. Those beams of light gathered together. At the place where the beams of light intertwined, a living being in a gray robe condensed. This is one of the stone pagoda's abilities. It can condense a pagoda god. Come and experience the strength of this pagoda god. Xie said, "I am the pagoda god, an existence that was born after the stone pagoda absorbed the blood of the evil ancestor. Although I am not a god, my strength is not comparable to a god. Not bad. Moreover, I am an immortal existence. As long as the stone pagoda exists in the world, I can live forever." The pagoda god said, and then began to chant an incantation. The mysterious incantation was activated by the pagoda god's consciousness. Then, in front of the pagoda god, a stone pagoda shadow appeared. "Suppress." The pagoda god said. The stone pagoda shadow quickly flew out. He moved towards Lin Feng to oppress him. Although it was only a shadow formed by the divine ability, Lin Feng felt an extremely dangerous aura from the stone pagoda shadow. That stone pagoda shadow. It made Lin Feng's hair stand on end. That stone pagoda shadow was definitely very terrifying. Of course, even if the stone pagoda shadow was very terrifying, Lin Feng was not afraid at all. Lin Feng stepped forward and swung his right fist. He used the Ancestor Dragon Fist. Behind Lin Feng, an Ancestor Dragon shadow suddenly appeared. The Ancestor Dragon shadow coiled around Lin Feng's fist. Bang! Along with the violent sound of the collision, there was a loud bang. Lin Feng punched the stone pagoda shadow. Lin Feng originally thought that he could shatter the pagoda shadow with one punch. What surprised him was that the stone pagoda shadow was not shattered by his Ancestor Dragon Fist. The stone pagoda shadow quickly grew bigger and continued to attack Lin Feng. 6 Paths of Reincarnation Fist. Lin Feng's expression was indifferent as he punched the stone pagoda again. The 6 Paths of Reincarnation Fist was very powerful. This was a fist technique that could continuously increase its power. When the first punch was thrown, Lin Feng was obviously passive, but after the second punch, Lin Feng's situation became much better. He threw 5 punches in a row. The 6 Paths of Reincarnation Fist became more and more powerful. After 5 punches, the 6 Paths of Reincarnation Fist finally suppressed the stone pagoda. Light of the pagoda god. Suddenly, the pagoda god roared. A divine light was shot out by the pagoda god. The divine light entered the stone pagoda, and the stone pagoda's power began to rise. The stone pagoda hit Lin Feng again. When the stone pagoda collided with Lin Feng again, it immediately blocked Lin Feng's attack. At this time, Xie swam behind Lin Feng. Obviously, Chapter 5090, Lin Feng noticed Xie, who appeared behind him. Now he was being held back by the pagoda god, so it was indeed a good time for Xie to deal with him. If he grasped it well, he might really be able to kill Lin Feng. The pagoda god controlled the stone pagoda to attack Lin Feng, and Xie also began to prepare a powerful divine ability. Lin Feng's expression was indifferent. He could multitask, so he was not afraid of this kind of siege. Of course, although he was not afraid, he still had to be cautious, because the opponent was too strong. Even if he could deal with the siege of the opponent, who knew if the opponent would suddenly use some terrifying technique when they were besieging him? This was also very likely. If the opponent suddenly used such a technique, it would be extremely bad. Lin Feng began to use the Great Curse technique. The curse power in the clay figurines and stone statues continuously flowed into Lin Feng's body. Lin Feng used the Great Cursing technique without a hitch. Bang! Lin Feng multitasked and used the Great Curse technique to attack the pagoda god and Xie at the same time. After receiving Lin Feng's attack, the pagoda god's body directly exploded. But the pagoda god did not die. Just as the pagoda god said, his body was almost immortal. Unless the stone pagoda was destroyed, the pagoda god could not be destroyed. The pagoda god let out an angry roar. He began to reorganize his body. At the same time, Xie, who was attacked by Lin Feng's Great Curse technique, actually successfully dodged the attack. This made Lin Feng very surprised. Generally speaking, once the Great Curse technique was successfully used, it would basically be impossible for the attack to be successfully dodged. It wasn't the first time Lin Feng had used the Great Cursing technique. However, this was the first time that the Great Curse technique was successfully dodged. The Great Curse technique, what a powerful technique. Not only have you cultivated the Great Curse technique, but you've also cultivated it to a very high level. Xie looked at Lin Feng in shock. Lin Feng didn't find it strange that this fellow was able to recognize the Great Curse art he was using. Lin Feng ignored Xie. Instead, he rushed straight towards Xie. Lin Feng used the 1 Qi into 3 Pure Ones technique. Then, 12 domineering magnetic fields were also displayed by Lin Feng. The intimidating power formed by the 12 domineering magnetic fields was unprecedentedly strong. Xie was instantly enveloped by the 12 domineering magnetic fields. His speed, attack power, and so on were all greatly affected. Xie's overall battle prowess was greatly declining. Lin Feng immediately used the Door of Everlasting Life. He created a phantom image of the Door of Everlasting Life and rushed towards Xie. 12 domineering magnetic fields combined with the shadow of the Door of Everlasting Life. Such a powerful attack was absolutely unimaginable. Lin Feng believed him. Someone as powerful as Xie, if he received this attack of his, even if he did not die, he would have to peel off a layer of skin. Illusory spell. But at this moment, Xie couldn't help but let out a low shout. His body became illusory. There were even many double images. When Lin Feng's shadow of the Door of Everlasting Life suppressed over, it was actually unable to cause any harm to Xie. Lin Feng couldn't help but be shocked. The illusory spell, this divine ability, was a bit too strange. It could actually ignore his divine ability attack. After Xie used the illusory spell to dissolve Lin Feng's attack, the next moment, he arrived in front of Lin Feng. Then, he attacked Lin Feng with a powerful divine ability. This divine ability was called 10,000 Annihilation. 10,000 Annihilation here referred to all divine abilities and Daos. The meaning of annihilation referred to destruction. The meaning of 10,000 Annihilation was the destruction of all divine abilities and Daos. This was definitely an unparalleled, ancient, and modern divine ability. Its power was so strong that it shocked people. Eternal emptiness. Lin Feng's expression was indifferent. He also used a divine ability. This was the supreme divine ability passed down from the last era of the human clan. Although Lin Feng had only cultivated it to a small success, its power was still very strong. Lin Feng and Xie's attacks collided once again. Both sides took 3 steps back. Domineering intimidation. Lin Feng coldly shouted, and 12 layers of domineering auras bombarded Xie one after another. The power of the 12 layers of domineering auras stacked together was simply enough to destroy heaven and earth. After feeling the powerful power of the 12 layers of domineering auras, Xie's face couldn't help but sink slightly. This time, a storage ring on Xie's hand trembled slightly. Then, a huge light shield appeared, protecting Xie inside. That ring was actually not a storage ring. It was a top-grade treasure called the Ring of Protection. Once the Ring of Protection was activated, it could transform into a powerful protective light shield. If a cultivator was protected by the protective light shield, it could dissolve all kinds of attacks. Bang, bang, bang. The 12 layers of domineering auras bombarded the defensive light shield in succession. The attacks formed by the 12 layers of domineering auras were all blocked by the defensive light shield. That defensive light shield was really terrifying. The main reason was that the defensive magic treasure was relatively strong. I control the power of destiny. I will use the power of destiny to open the defensive light shield formed by this ring. Lin Feng used the Great Destiny technique. The power of destiny surged out. Then it poured into the light shield. Bang! A sound was heard. The defensive light shield. It directly shattered. Lin Feng's Great Destiny technique was indeed powerful. Now that the Great Destiny technique had destroyed the defensive light shield, Lin Feng continued to use a powerful divine ability. This divine ability was Lin Feng's self-created Supreme Reincarnation Fist. The Supreme Reincarnation Fist was an incomparably domineering divine ability. When this divine ability was activated, all the divine abilities that Lin Feng cultivated would be activated together, and then all the divine abilities would increase the power of the Supreme Reincarnation Fist. So, the Supreme Reincarnation Fist was Lin Feng's most powerful divine ability attack. However, the Supreme Reincarnation Fist also had its own shortcomings. That was, this divine ability consumed too much of one's body. Under normal circumstances, Lin Feng would rarely use this divine ability against enemies. But now, Lin Feng planned to use the Supreme Reincarnation Fist to attack Xie Zi. After the Supreme Reincarnation Fist was used by Lin Feng, the powerful fist intent locked onto Xie Zi. After feeling the power of Lin Feng's punch, Xie Zi was extremely shocked. Once again, he used the illusory incantation. After Lin Feng's punch, he discovered that the majority of the attack was dissolved by the illusory spell. Only a small portion of the attack landed on Xie Zi's body. Xie Zi was sent flying, but he didn't suffer too much damage. What a terrifying fellow. It's not good to continue fighting. Let's go. After sending Xie Zi flying, Lin Feng didn't continue to attack Xie Zi. Instead, he quickly rushed downstairs. Who is this person? How can he be so terrifying? Chapter 5091. The pagoda god reappeared and said, "The path to becoming a sovereign must be lonely and invincible. If you want to become a sovereign, you must be invincible in the world. That kid must die." Of course, he must die, but we can't be too hasty. We'll play with him slowly. Now, I need to familiarize myself with the stone pagoda. Once I completely control it, I'll be able to play with him however I want. Xie Zi said. Lin Feng rushed out of the stone pagoda. At this moment, the stone pagoda shook violently. Many cultivators rushed out of the stone pagoda. Obviously, many cultivators suspected that the stone pagoda had been refined by someone. Lin Feng, the fire Qilin, Feng Yaorao, and the others gathered together. They didn't stay any longer and quickly left. Not long after they left, the stone pagoda broke through the void and disappeared. Soon, the news of Xie Zi obtaining the stone pagoda quickly spread throughout the ancient demon domain. Even the arrogant words that Xie Zi said in front of so many experts were exposed. Many people felt that it was inconceivable after hearing those words, because even the Undying Realm's 8 young masters weren't so arrogant. Who was that person? He was actually arrogant to this extent. Many people became curious about Xie Zi's identity. Soon, more news spread, and the news that came out pointed out Xie Zi's origins. Xie Zi was the only son of the 7th generation evil god. The 7th generation evil god's era was very chaotic. In addition, the 7th generation evil god also had a great enemy. So, he sealed his son in the Godstone. He was waiting for the day when his son broke out of the Godstone. When everyone knew Xie Zi's origin, they were all shocked. He was actually the son of the evil god, a titled god. Era. The evil god was definitely an extremely terrifying existence. Among the many titled gods, among them, the evil god was also one of the top titled gods. Yes, as the son of the 7th generation evil god, Xie Zi's talent was naturally terrifying. That guy called himself the son of the great Tao. How ridiculous. Some cultivators sneered after hearing Xie Zi's identity. Thinking back to how arrogant Xie Zi was and how he looked at everyone with disdain, they were still quite angry. At that time, Xie Zi was too arrogant and looked down on everyone, which angered a lot of cultivators. In fact, Xie Zi did have the right to be arrogant. At his age, it was really difficult to find a cultivator as strong as him. Xie Zi's luck was also very strong, so he was always able to obtain many good things. Even the evil ancestor pagoda, to him. To Xie Zi, this was like adding wings to a tiger. The evil god. The demon god's son, the demon god's son, demon god, as son, and the others, demon lords, demons. A cultivator said. And thought, with the arrival of the apocalypse, those ancient powerhouses who were in deep slumber, or the powerful existences sealed in the god's stone, or some other terrifying creatures would choose to come out at this time. But in fact, the end of the world also represented opportunities, because countless opportunities would appear during the end of the world. When the end of the world came, many experts would be created. At this time, it was the true era of heroes and kings fighting for supremacy. This era was destined to be a great era, with surging waves. Lin Feng, Fire Qilin, Little Peng King, and the others went to the first ancestral land of the demon clan. On the way, Lin Feng asked the three of them about the Great Peng King and the Peacock King. After asking around, he found out that the Great Peng King and the Peacock King were still in seclusion. However, they were not far away from coming out. If they were lucky when they returned this time, maybe they would be able to see the Great Peng King and the Peacock King. In the past, the Great Peng King and the Peacock King were regarded as the hope of the demon clan. Their talent was extremely heaven-defying. Even an existence like the Fire Qilin might not be comparable to the Great Peng King and the Peacock King. This was the terrifying part of the Great Peng King and the Peacock King. When the Sky Martial Continent suppressed their cultivation, they were already able to defy the heavens. It was truly rare. Now, they had come to the first ancestral land of the demon clan in the Undying Realm. Moreover, they had been here for many years. Presumably, their cultivation had long reached an unimaginable level. The Fire Qilin said, I heard that when they are in seclusion, they will head to an ancient battlefield to temper their cultivation. That ancient battlefield seems to be called the Time Reversal World. I wonder if this is true or not. Lin Feng's spirit was slightly lifted. He had naturally heard of the Time Reversal World. Back then, his father was so powerful. It was said that it was because he had entered the Time Reversal World. What kind of world was the Time Reversal World? Lin Feng had always been very puzzled. Now, he actually mentioned the Time Reversal World from the Fire Qilin. Could it be that the first ancestral land of the demon clan still had a way to enter the Time Reversal World? Little Peng King said, that is indeed the case. Previously, Uncle came out of seclusion once. I heard him talk about the Time Reversal World, but he did not explain in detail what kind of world it was. Perhaps it was because he was afraid that he did not explain it that clearly. Lin Feng said, does that mean that the first ancestral land of the demon clan has a way to enter the Time Reversal World? The Fire Qilin shook its head. The first ancestral land of the demon clan doesn't have a way to enter the Time Reversal World. Lin Feng said, the Great Peng King and the Peacock King are cultivating in the first ancestral land of the demon clan. If the first ancestral land of the demon clan doesn't have a way to enter the Time Reversal World, then how can the Great Peng King and the Peacock King enter the Time Reversal World? The Fire Qilin said, they entered through the Fleeting Lake. The Fleeting Lake? What kind of place is that? Lin Feng asked curiously. Chapter 5092. There's actually such a strange lake, said Lin Feng in astonishment. If it were anyone else, they would be extremely shocked after hearing about this lake. That was because this lake was really too strange. Feng, Yarao said, this lake is really strange. I tried it before, and I saw a cave in the lake. Then I tried to communicate with the cave, and when I connected with it, I instantly entered it. Fortunately, it was a cave in the real world. Otherwise, I might not have been able to come out of the virtual world. Lin Feng said, so there must have been people who entered the virtual world? and none of the cultivators who entered the virtual world came out alive. Feng Yaorao nodded, then smiled bitterly and said, "Previously, there was a demonic cultivator who ascended with us. She entered a virtual world, and since then, there has been no news of her. It's been almost 100 years since then. I guess she's really trapped there and died." The Fire Qilin said, "You're talking about that little girl from the White Fox clan, right? She's really sexy, charming, and charming. Just looking at her makes people drool, but unfortunately, she has such a short life." Obviously, the girl Feng Yarao was talking about was unexpectedly a peerless beauty, but she had died just like that. It was indeed a pity. Such a delicate beauty had died just like that, and it was easy for the majority of male cultivators to feel extremely vexed. Feng Yarao said, "That's her. Apart from her, there are many other people in history who have suffered a calamity. That's why the ancestral land of the demonic beasts doesn't allow people to go to the lake so easily. Even if they go there, they can't casually enter the places they saw in the lake. Of course, if they want to play some exciting games, nobody can stop them." Lin Feng said, "So that means that the great Peng Emperor and the Peacock King saw the world where time had reversed at the lake? Then they entered the world where time had reversed from the lake?" "That's indeed the case," said the little Peng Emperor. The Fire Qilin said gloomily, "It really makes people jealous. Why didn't I see the world where time had reversed at the lake? I also want to see a world where time is reversed and then enter that world. We also want to—" Feng Yaorao, little Peng King, little Moon, and Princess Shui Yao said in unison. No one didn't want to. However, if he wanted to enter, he would need to be lucky. Lin Feng asked, "Over the years, how many cultivators from the first ancestral land of the Yao race have entered the world of time reversal?" The Fire Qilin shook its head and said, "Very, very few. As far as I know, you can count them on one hand." Lin Feng nodded. Lin Feng was looking forward to this trip to the first ancestral land of the demon race. He wanted to go to Suyu Lake to take a look. Was there any hope for him to enter the world where time was reversed? 3 months later, Lin Feng followed the Fire Qilin and the others to the first ancestral land of the Yao race. They first took a teleportation array in an ancient city called Flying Dragon City. The array sent them to a barren mountain covered in restrictions. They then took another teleportation array in the barren mountain. When they reappeared, they were in an underwater palace. They repeatedly used teleportation arrays. After using 7 teleportation arrays, Lin Feng and the others finally arrived outside the first ancestral land of the Yao race. The first ancestral land of the Yao race was very mysterious. No one knew exactly where it was. To enter the first ancestral land of the Yao race, one had to bring a token and take a special teleportation array. It was a very complicated path. In truth, it was to conceal the true location of the first ancestral land. At this moment, Lin Feng and the others were standing in a dense forest. The first ancestral land of the Yao race was an independent, small world. This kind of small world naturally would not appear. To enter such a small world, one either had to master some special means, find a space node, and enter from there, or hold a token to inform the people of the first ancestral land of the Yao race. Then, the cultivators of the first ancestral land of the Yao race would come out and lead everyone in. The Fire Qilin took out a flag. The flag shone and shot out a divine light. The divine light kept growing bigger. Soon, it wrapped around Lin Feng and the others. Then, the divine light flew in a direction of the forest and soon disappeared into thin air. Swish! The light disappeared. Lin Feng found himself in a place with beautiful mountains and clear waters. The spiritual qi here was very abundant. This place was very comfortable. In the distance, there were Spirit Lou, Spirit Rabbit, and other creatures running. In the sky, there were also groups of red-crowned cranes and all kinds of spiritual birds flying. In the distance, Lin Feng even saw a white tiger standing on the top of a mountain and looking in their direction. The white tiger quickly withdrew its gaze and looked in another direction. This place, it should be the first ancestral land of the Yao race. Let's go and have a rest. When we're done, we'll take little Lin Feng to see the ancestors. They're really strong. Each one of them is a bestial god from the ancient times, said Lin Feng. The fire Qilin said. Hearing that, Lin Feng couldn't help but take a deep breath. The title of demon god was among the titled gods. It belonged to one of the top titles of the Yao race. To be able to be called a demon god was definitely an existence that shocked the heavens and earth. In the past, the first ancestral land of the Yao race was very powerful. There was more than one true immortal powerhouse guarding it. But now, there was a titled god. A demon god of the era had appeared. Obviously, the current first ancestral land of the Yao race was perhaps more powerful and terrifying than the world imagined. Because before this, Lin Feng did not even know about the existence of these demon gods. Okay, Lin Feng nodded. They had been on the road for several months. Basically, they did not have a good rest. Lin Feng was also extremely tired. Lin Feng followed the fire Qilin and the others into the depths of the Yao race's ancestral land. On the way, they saw some patrolling cultivators. Those patrolling cultivators were not weak. They were all elite cultivators of the first ancestral land of the Yao race. There were many Yao cultivators in the first ancestral land of the Yao race. There was even a huge ancient city of the Yao race here. In addition to the ancient city of the Yao race, there were many towns and villages scattered everywhere. The area of this small world was very large. It was about the size of a prefecture in the 9 states. Chapter 1593. The structure of the ancestral lands is very complicated. For example, the first ancestral land is divided into many factions. For example, the factions left behind by the 3 Yao gods are all very powerful. Aside from the 3 Yao gods, there are also some top-tier factions. Although they don't have any Yao gods, their foundations are still very strong. Existences close to the Yao gods are sealed in godstones, and in recent years, they have come out one after another. Even the Yao gods don't dare to underestimate them. Little Peng King said. Lin Feng said, "It seems that the first ancestral land is a very lively place." Little Peng King and the others naturally knew what Lin Feng meant by lively. Actually, what Lin Feng meant by lively was scheming against each other. Think about it. When a family lived together, there would always be friction. What's more, when cultivators from different factions lived together. As the saying goes, where there are people, there will be conflicts. Now, there were so many factions gathered in the first ancestral land. All kinds of conflicts were bound to occur. Princess Shui Yao replied. A few years ago, there was quite a bit of trouble, and the fighting was quite fierce. However, ever since the 3 devil gods appeared, the various large powers have become much more well-behaved. With the 3 devil gods holding down the fort, those powers have been able to calm down. Lin Feng said, "The 3 Yao gods also have their own factions. I'm afraid that the 3 Yao gods can't be fair, right?" Little Peng King said, "The 3 Yao gods don't care about the first ancestral land. They came out this time because they want to defy the heavens and change their fate. As long as the cultivators in the first ancestral land don't go too far, the 3 Yao gods won't interfere. Therefore, the 3 Yao gods won't deliberately favor the factions they left behind. Of course, the The three Yao gods are still experts from the three top-tier factions. Although the three Yao gods won't help the three factions, after the three Yao gods came out, the status of the three factions also rose. What the Little Rock King said was human nature. Along the way, Lin Feng learned a lot about the first ancestral land from the Fire Qilin, Little Peng King, and the others. About 10 days later, Lin Feng and the others arrived at their residence. The place where the Fire Qilin and the others lived was called Ancient Yao Town. It was a town. Most of the people living here were cultivators who had ascended from the lower realm. The cultivators living in the ancient city were the native demon cultivators of the undying realm. Of course, ordinary native cultivators of the undying realm were not qualified to live in the ancient city. The demon clan cultivators inside were basically cultivators from various major forces of the demon clan. Ordinary native cultivators of the undying realm, those who had a better life would live in towns, while those who had a worse life would live in villages. There was a huge difference in where one lived. First, the first point. Regardless of whether it was the ancient city at the center or the towns and villages outside, they were all covered by a huge spirit gathering formation. The weakest spirit gathering array was naturally in the village. The spirit gathering array in the town was much more powerful than the one in the village. The spirit gathering array in the center of the ancient city was the most powerful. The stronger the spirit gathering formation, the more beneficial it would be for one's cultivation. The second point, clearly the cultivators who lived in the ancient city were more convenient than the cultivators who lived in the towns, and the cultivators who lived in the towns were more convenient than the cultivators who lived in the villages. For example, the trading of some items. There was a huge commercial street in the center of the ancient city, as well as places like black markets. If one wanted to buy something or sell something, one could go to those commercial streets or black markets. Although there were also commercial streets and black markets in the towns, compared to the ancient city in the center, it was simply worlds apart. As for the villages, there were no commercial streets or black markets at all. Or there was a village grocery store. The third point, in the ancient city in the center, one could get first-hand orders about the first ancestral land of the demon clan, and a lot of news about the outside world. However, if one lived in a town or a village, it would obviously take many days to get the news. After the great Peng King, the Peacock King, and the others came to the first ancestral land of the demon clan, they showed extraordinary talent. In addition, they were cultivators from the 9 provinces' great world. In the beginning, they actually lived in the ancient city in the center. However, they were ostracized, so the great Peng King and the Peacock King discussed and moved out of the ancient city. Only then did they settle down in the ancient city. They bought a courtyard in the ancient city. The courtyard was not particularly big. However, it was more than enough to house 40 to 50 people. Moreover, the great Peng King and the others did not have a lot of people. Absence makes the heart grow fonder, so we won't disturb you too. However, we have to take it easy. Our bed here has been in disrepair for a long time and is not sturdy. The Fire Qilin said with a smile. Lin Feng kicked the Fire Qilins, but this guy, nothing good can come out of a dog's mouth. What the hell is he talking about? Feng Yarao was not embarrassed. She had a cheerful personality, and everyone knew about her relationship with Lin Feng. Back then, Lin Feng had even proposed to the Heavenly Wind God, and the Heavenly Wind God had agreed to marry Feng Yarao to Lin Feng. Feng Yarao led Lin Feng to their residence. She did not arrange a new residence for Lin Feng. Instead, she brought Lin Feng to her room. It was clear that from now on, Lin Feng and Feng Yarao would live together shamelessly. Lin Feng and Feng Yarao checked the items they had obtained. Lin Feng discovered that the evil aura surrounding the three treasures had yet to dissipate. He was unable to clearly see what it was. He also could not take out the items inside. However, the evil aura was weakening. Perhaps it would not be long before it completely dissipated. At that time, he would be able to find out what the three treasures were. When night fell, Lin Feng and Feng Yaorao left their residence and came to the living room in the front courtyard. The Fire Qilin looked at Lin Feng and Feng Yaorao with a teasing gaze. It was only when Lin Feng took out his spike club that the Fire Qilin regained its serious expression. The Fire Qilin said, "We are not far from the central ancient city, so we can reach there in 4 hours. Let's go to the central ancient city now and meet the three demon gods first, because non-demon cultivators have to obtain permission from the higher-ups of the demon race to go to Suyu Lake as long as the three demon gods agree. No one can say anything. Since that's the case, let's set off now. I also want to meet the three demon gods of the ancient era." Lin Feng said. Everyone set off toward the central ancient city. For hours later, they arrived at the central ancient city. The walls of the central ancient city were constructed from a type of dark demon stone. Chapter 5094. One had to pay a certain amount of immortal stones to enter the city. Of course, these immortal stones were nothing to Lin Feng and the others. After entering the central ancient city, they discovered that it was bustling with people. Countless demon race cultivators had gathered in the central ancient city. Little Rock King said, "The cultivators from the towns and villages outside can only enter the central ancient city once every 3 months. Every time they come, they can only stay for 10 days at most. After 10 days, they must leave. If they don't leave, they will be expelled." As soon as he finished speaking, a commotion came from the distance. Some cultivators were fleeing in the ancient city, and many guards were chasing after them. In the end, the cultivator was caught by the guards and was beaten half to death. A group of guards dragged the cultivator out and threw him outside the city. Feng Yaorao said, "That guy should be the cultivator who didn't leave after the time limit was up. There's a complete sky mirror in the center of the ancient city, so no one can hide here without being discovered. Everyone's situation is recorded, so if you want to play any tricks, you'll be caught dead." The group continued to walk inside. They planned to find a place to stay first, then rest for a day before visiting the three demon gods. On the way, Lin Feng heard the Fire Qilin and the others mentioned some things about the three demon gods. In the past, the three demon gods had reached the Sage Realm. Although they were only at the early stage of the Sage Realm, they were still Sage Realm cultivators. The cultivation of the three demon gods could be described as unfathomable. However, after countless years, the realms of the three great demon gods had fallen to a certain extent. Now, the three great demon gods should only have the strength of the Sage to be realm. But even so, they were incomparably powerful. Countless people looked up to them because even the Heaven Emperor was only at this level. It was too difficult for him to break through to the Sage Realm. The reason why the three great demon gods could break through to the Sage Realm in the past was that they had their own opportunities. Now that they were reborn, the three demon gods wanted to cultivate to the Sage Realm again and break through the shackles of the past. However, they also knew that this was much more difficult than normal cultivation. But no matter how difficult it was, the three demon gods would not give up. When they were looking for a place to stay, they met a group of cultivators. The leader was a young man who was transformed from a giant rock and belonged to the same race as Little Rock King. When he saw Little Rock King and the others, he said, "Little Rock King, I heard that you brought a human cultivator to the ancestral land of the demons. Have you forgotten that even you live in the first ancestral land of the demons? What right do you have to bring a human cultivator to the first ancestral land of the demons? Don't they have any rules at all? I wonder how the Great Pink King and Peacock King taught you. This young master of the demon race had a lofty and arrogant attitude. The expressions of Little Rock King and the others were somewhat ugly. Although this person was relatively young, he had already cultivated for over 80,000 years. Compared to the people of the 9 prefectures, the time they spent cultivating was much longer. One had to know that among Lin Feng's group, the Fire Qilin, who had cultivated for the longest time, had only cultivated for 3 to 4,000 years. The Fire Qilin and the Red World Fairy were almost from the same era. Cultivators of the 9 prefectures were often like this. They were young, powerful, and had astonishing talent. It was easy for them to arouse the jealousy of others. For example, the cultivator in front of them. This person was called Jin Zichong, and he was the 5th-generation grandson of the great golden-winged Rock King. This person's bloodline had undergone atavism, and he was very powerful. His bloodline was very similar to Little Rock King's because Little Rock King's bloodline had also undergone atavism. However, although their bloodlines were similar, their talents were somewhat different. Little Rock King's talent was much better than Jin Zichong's because Little Rock King was a cultivator from the 9 prefectures' Great World. Therefore, even if their bloodlines were similar, as long as they came from the 9 prefectures' Great World, they would definitely be more talented than others. This made Jin Zichong rather jealous of Little Rock King. Jin Zichong's cultivation was now at the level of a quasi-true immortal, but he could fight against a true immortal. Therefore, his status was extremely high. Little Rock King said, "There are no rules that say we can't bring our friends to the ancient demon territory." Chong Jin's expression darkened when he heard the Little Peng King refuting him. He smiled coldly and said, "Little Peng King, how dare you act so presumptuously in front of me? Nothing can be accomplished without rules. The first ancestral land of the monster race has its own rules. Since you dared to act so presumptuously in front of me, you should be punished severely. But since we're of the same race, I'll let you off. How about this? Slap yourself 10 times, and I'll let bygones be bygones." At this moment, many people gathered around to watch the show. When they saw Little Rock King and the others being targeted by Jin Zichong, they immediately looked at Little Rock King and the others with pity. The Great Rock King of the Demon Clan's ancestral land was a race that had been passed down by a demon god. This race was extremely terrifying. Being targeted by this race was naturally very difficult in the Demon Clan's ancestral land. Back then, Great Rock King and Peacock King had discussed and decided to move out of the central ancient city because they were targeted by the Great Rock King and the other races. The reason why they were targeted was because it was actually because of jealousy. In this world, there was no love without a reason, but there was jealousy without a reason. Many people couldn't bear to see others doing well. There were too many people who would gloat when they saw others unlucky. For example, the Great Rock Clan. They were descendants of the demon god. They claimed to be very talented and had a very high status among the demon clan in the ancient demon realm. But ever since the arrival of Great Rock King and the others, they suddenly realized the Great Rock Clan cultivators who came from the mortal world were actually much more talented than them. They had always looked down on mortal world cultivators. Now that they saw that the cultivators from the mortal world were more talented than them, they were naturally extremely jealous. However, the 3 demon gods rather admired Great Rock King and the others. So they wanted to ostracize Great Rock King and the others, but they couldn't do it too blatantly. The practitioners of the demon tribe gradually discovered that the practitioners of the demon tribe, who came from the 9 states macro world, were very special. Their talents were very powerful, but this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that there seemed to be something special about them that allowed their cultivation to progress very quickly. This made their talents far surpass those of practitioners of the same bloodline. Only then did many people believe the rumors about the practitioners of the 9 states. Chapter 5095. This situation was like immigration. From a country, immigrating to another country. However, those who immigrated to the past were often ostracized. In fact, not to mention the migration between countries. Even if they lived from one city to another, they might be ostracized and looked down upon. For example, if they lived from a small city to a big city, they would be despised by the people of the big city. In any corner of the world, every moment, such things were happening all over the world. But when the people of the big city found out that these people from the small city were actually richer than them, at this moment, jealousy began to grow. In the world of cultivators, it was naturally the same situation. Jin Zicheng, don't go too far. Little Rock King clenched his fists and said coldly, "You reckless fool. Is my name something you can call out? Now, a simple slap is no longer enough for me to forgive you. You need to kneel on the ground and slap yourself. My patience is limited. If you don't know how to appreciate favors, I don't mind doing it myself. When the time comes, fists and feet have no eyes. If you are beaten half to death, don't blame me for not reminding you." Jin Zicheng looked at Little Rock King indifferently. It was like a cat playing with a mouse. Little Rock King's face was extremely gloomy. The rock race's status in the demon realm was too high, so he did not want to offend the rock race. But now, Jin Zicheng was going too far. This made Little Rock King quite angry. Bullied by others, being humiliated by others, couldn't he fight back? He was really aggrieved. F***CK, I didn't want to tolerate you for a long time. The fire Qilin had unknowingly circled behind Jin Zicheng and directly smashed a brick towards the back of Jin Zicheng's head. That was not an ordinary brick. It was actually a powerful treasure, forged by the fire Qilin from the 9 heavenly stars. The power of this brick was quite fierce. Bang! The fire Qilin smashed the brick on the back of Jin Zicheng's head. Jin Zicheng screamed, and then reached out to touch the back of his head. It was wet and sticky. Jin Zicheng took a look. His eyes rolled back, and he almost fainted. Blood. Blood. His hands were covered in blood. Jin Zicheng was injured. "I'm going to kill you," Kim Zicheng roared angrily. "Come, let's spar again." The fire Qilin grinned and smashed another brick at Jin Zicheng. The brick was aimed at the back of Kim Zicheng's head. The brick was aimed at Kim Zicheng's head. There was a loud bang. The brick hit Kim Zicheng hard. Blood immediately flowed down from his head. Kim Zicheng covered his bleeding head and let out a shrill scream. His body. Then he crashed to the ground. Kim Jong-chong remained motionless. This guy was knocked unconscious by the fire Qilin's 2 bricks. Damn, what's going on? Everyone was looking at each other in dismay. None of them had recovered from the shock. Kim Jong-chong had already fainted. Kim Zicheng was truly too pitiful. Moreover, it was too sullen. He didn't even understand what was going on before he was knocked unconscious by a few consecutive bricks. Kim Zicheng had never been so sullen before. The fire Qilin said, "Everyone, please bear witness to this. We were just exchanging pointers, but this guy couldn't defeat me, so I knocked him unconscious with a brick." Many people couldn't help but roll their eyes when they heard the fire Qilin. Could the fire Qilin be any more shameless? How could the fire Qilin be so shameless? It was the fire Qilin who had attacked Kim Zicheng when he wasn't paying attention. Despicable. Fire Unicorn, you're despicable. No matter what, you're a member of the Holy Beast clan, and you're attacking people by surprise. You're a disgrace to your ancestors. We're all bestial beasts. You're a disgrace. It's a disgrace to the Fire Qilin, said one of Kim Zicheng's followers coldly. The Fire Qilin didn't care about their provocation. He said indifferently, "If you can't defeat me, just admit it. Don't try to find excuses." How ridiculous. Lin Feng knew how shameless the Fire Qilin was. When the Fire Qilin was shameless, it was infuriating. Just like now, Kim Zicheng's followers were trembling with anger, but they didn't dare to attack the Fire Qilin and the others. After all, the Fire Qilin and the others were very strong. Fine, just you wait. When young Master Kim wakes up, you won't be able to bear the consequences. One of Kim Zicheng's followers said coldly. His eyes couldn't help but reveal a sinister glint, following which Jin Zicheng's followers carried him away. Lin Feng and the others didn't stay either. They quickly left. Kim Zicheng and the others have been bullying the 9 provinces' Great World's monster cultivators. Before this, the monster cultivators had been swallowing their anger and didn't resist. Now that they dare to resist, they won't let this matter rest. Just wait and see. There will be a good show. At this time, a cultivator said. This cultivator's words gained the approval of many people. Another person said, "It shouldn't be too bad. After all, they're all monster cultivators. They'll see each other all the time." A middle-aged cultivator said, "That's not necessarily the case. These people from the 9 provinces' great world are very talented and have aroused the jealousy of many people. Also, I heard that when these people went to the heavenly illusionary land, many of them obtained great opportunities. For example, the little Peng King obtained a heavenly illusionary mirror. There are 7 heavenly illusionary mirrors in total. As long as one can obtain one, one can obtain the other heavenly illusionary mirrors. When the heavenly illusionary mirrors are combined, one can obtain an ancient weapon. Just imagine what an amazing opportunity this is. Many people's eyes have already turned red from jealousy. So, today's matter is actually just a fuse. Perhaps there will be even more intense conflicts in the future. That's right. I agree with this brother. If the great Peng King and the Peacock King hadn't received some guidance from the 3 great ancestors, many people would have attacked them long ago. An old man said, the 3 great ancestors referred to the 3 monster immortals who had once guided the great Peng King and the Peacock King in their cultivation. Although they weren't master and disciple, there was still some affection between them. This was also the reason why the other monster forces didn't dare to attack. However, Chapter 5096, Lin Feng and the others found an inn to stay in. They rented one of the courtyards in the inn. They rented it for a total of 10 days. After arriving at the living room, Lin Feng said, "Now that things have turned out like this, I'm afraid that the situation in the demon clan's ancestral land will be even more difficult in the future." The Fire Qilin said, "If this place doesn't want me, there will naturally be a place for me. Actually, we already had a discussion before, and we plan to wait for the Great Rock King and the Peacock King to come out before following you to the Sin Realm." Hearing this, Lin Feng's eyes lit up. He naturally hoped that the Great Rock King, the Peacock King, the Fire Qilin, and the others would go to the Sin Realm. They were the people closest to him. If he went to the Sin Realm, he would be able to see them often, and he would also be able to increase the strength of the Sin Realm. Naturally, this was something that he was looking forward to. Lin Feng said, "That's good. Then, let's go to the Sin Realm. That's our own territory." The Little Rock King said, "We need to wait until Uncle and the others come out." Lin Feng asked, "Do the people of the demon clan's ancestral land know that they have entered the world of time reversal?" The Little Rock King shook his head and said, "I don't know. Only the few of us know about this. The people of the demon clan's ancestral land were already very ostracized by us. If they knew that Uncle and the others had entered the world of time reversal, who knows what those people would do?" The Little Rock King's words were actually very reasonable. To put it bluntly, this world, everything was dominated by benefits. It was an incomparably realistic world. In the eyes of countless cultivators, benefits were paramount. Therefore, for the sake of benefits, these cultivators would do all sorts of things. After resting for a day, Lin Feng followed the fire Qilin and the others to pay their respects to the three demon gods. Lin Feng really wanted to see the three bestial beasts. After all, they were experts from the ancient era. Being able to meet such an ancient expert was not an easy thing to do. Of course, not everyone was qualified to meet the three demon gods. Thus, Lin Feng's invitation clearly stated his identity. Sin Realm's master, Lin Feng. This was the identity that Lin Feng had written. He believed that the three Yao gods had heard of his name. Lin Feng's invitation was presented to the three Yao gods. Soon after, an old man from the bestial clan came and invited Lin Feng to see the three bestial gods. This old man was a supreme elder of the demon race's ancestral ground. His status was also extraordinary, but he was nothing in front of the three ancestors. Lin Feng saw the three bestial beasts in a palace in the starry sky. Lin Feng originally thought that the three demon gods would have white hair. However, Lin Feng was slightly surprised to see them. Although they were ancient existences, they weren't old. They looked like middle-aged men with exuberant blood energy. This was a clear difference from the old men. After the old experts came into being, their bloodlines would collapse. It would be very difficult for them to reverse the heavens' will. However, the three Yao gods were in their prime. Even though their cultivation levels had already dropped, their lifespans were slipping away quickly, but their powerful blood energy was enough to support their transformation. The three bestial beasts were also observing Lin Feng. Lin Feng didn't know what they were thinking. "Greetings, masters," said Lin Feng, bowing respectfully. Lin Feng cupped his fists and bowed to the three. The golden-robed cultivator was De Peng. He smiled and said, "Young friend, there's no need to be so courteous." Lin Feng stood up. The gray-robed Yao god was the heaven-devouring python demon god. He was also an extremely terrifying existence. His face was somewhat sinister. He looked at Lin Feng and said, "The imperial clan of sovereigns is an extraordinary clan. In the past, it was extremely prosperous. During the primordial era, Ji Zishu's name shook the entire primordial era. Later on, many people thought that your clan's inheritance had been lost. Many people sighed. Today, I'm very happy to see a descendant of the imperial clan of sovereigns." Lin Feng said, "Thank you for your concern, Senior." The heaven-devouring python demon god smiled and didn't say anything else. The third Yao god was from the white peacock demon god. The celestial emperor's mother was a cultivator from the white peacock demon god. The white peacock demon god had been very powerful in the past, but the celestial race and the immortal race still looked down on them. Because of this, the celestial emperor had been ridiculed in his youth. Of course, the white peacock demon god was divided into many branches. The branch of the undying realm might not have much relation to the white peacock demon god in the celestial realm. Do any of your ancestors still exist in this world? The white peacock demon god asked. The great Peng demon god and the heaven-devouring python demon god were clearly very interested in this question, and they both looked at Lin Feng. They wanted to get an answer from Lin Feng. Lin Feng said, there are still a few ancestors who are in deep slumber in the ancestral lands. Oh, there's actually such a thing? The three Yao gods were very surprised. They couldn't tell if Lin Feng was telling the truth or not. Actually, they felt that Lin Feng was lying. This was because the Sovereign Emperor clan was too heaven-defying. It was very difficult for several of their clansmen to live in the same era. Thus, deep in their hearts, they didn't really believe Lin Feng's words. However, the Sovereign Emperor clan was too extraordinary, and they possessed many unimaginable methods. Was there a way to deceive the heavens and avoid the punishment of the heavenly Tao? Was there a way for several of their clansmen to survive in the same era? This was also something that was very difficult to say. Lin Feng said that because he hadn't seen any other cultivators from the sovereign imperial clan, Lin Feng didn't care about the sovereign imperial clan, those powerful ancestors. Perhaps they had all died long ago. What a sorrowful thing. But in front of outsiders, he naturally couldn't reveal all of his clan's secrets. Could he? Moreover, perhaps the Sovereign Emperor clan, were there really still some of their ancestors alive? This was also very likely. If you have the chance, please send our greetings to the seniors, said the great Peng Demon God. The great Peng Demon God said, "This junior will remember." Lin Feng said. After pausing for a moment, Lin Feng continued. This time, apart from paying respects to the three seniors, this junior also wants to go to Suru Lake to take a look. I hope that the three seniors can help me. Chapter 5097. Junior will remember this. Lin Feng replied. The white peacock demon god flicked his finger, and a jade talisman flew towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng took the jade talisman in his hand. The white peacock king said, "You can go with this jade talisman." "All right. Then this junior will not disturb the three seniors' cultivation. This junior will take his leave." Lin Feng said. The three demon gods nodded. Lin Feng did not stay any longer and quickly left. Outside, he met up with the Fire Qilin and the others. "How is it?" the Fire Qilin asked. Lin Feng took out the jade talisman and said, "I've already obtained the token. We can go to the Suyu Lake now." "Excellent," the Fire Qilin said with a smile. Lin Feng and the others did not stay any longer and directly left the ancient city. They did not check out either. The remaining rent for the next few days would be considered a gift to the inn. The Suyu Lake was 3 days away from the ancient city, not long after Lin Feng and the others left. Jin Zichong, who had been knocked unconscious by the Fire Qilin with a brick, finally woke up. Actually, Jin Zichong should have woken up earlier, but after suffering such a great humiliation. In Jin Zichong's subconscious, he did not want to wake up. Thus, Jin Zichong did not wake up for a long time. After waking up, Jin Zichong still felt waves of intense pain coming from the back of his head and forehead. The current Jin Zichong simply wanted to cut the Fire Qilin into 1,000 pieces. Even Lin Feng, Little Rock King, Feng Yaorao, and the others were hated by Jin Zichong. He had never suffered such a great humiliation. Thus, today's matter was absolutely intolerable. Jin Zichong stood up and went outside. "Young master, you're awake." Seeing Jin Zichong come out, the servant outside hurriedly bowed to Jin Zichong. "Where are the Fire Qilin and the others?" Jin Zichong asked with a gloomy expression. The servant said, 2 hours ago, these people left the city. It is said that they accompanied that human cultivator to the Suyu Lake. "Oh, they're heading towards Suyu Lake. That's great. It's not easy to deal with those guys in the center of the city, but if they leave the city, it'll be much easier." Jin Zichong's eyes flashed, and he ordered coldly, "Go and gather some strong cultivators. I want to destroy those bastards." As a servant, He naturally did not dare to disobey Kim Zichong's orders. Therefore, after hearing Jin Zichong's order, the servant complied. Then, he quickly went to gather the experts. Lin Feng and the others ran into Hua Lingxian when they were heading towards Suyu Lake. Lin Feng and Hua Lingxian had known each other for a long time. Hua Lingxian was Demon Empress Feng, she's disciple. Before those experts were born, Demon Empress Feng, she was the top expert of the demon clan. Her cultivation was at the true immortal realm, and her cultivation was unfathomable. Even many experts with strong backgrounds didn't dare to underestimate Demon Empress Phoenix Creek. However, Demon Empress Phoenix Creek was rather low profile. She rarely asked about the matters of the demon clan's ancestral land, and she seemed to be focused on cultivation. After seeing Lin Feng, Hua Lingxian seemed to be quite happy. She said, "I didn't think that Lin Gongzi would come to the demon clan's ancestral land at this time. Fortunately, I rushed back, or else I would have missed Lin Gongzi. Now, where are Lin Gongzi and Yarao planning to go? Why don't you come to my place to rest?" Hua Lingxian lived on Phoenix Creek Mountain, which was a cultivation paradise. It was where Demon Empress Feng, she cultivated. Lin Feng had learned that Hua Lingxian and Feng Yarao had a very good relationship. Perhaps beautiful women would always admire each other. Therefore, although they hadn't known each other for a long time, their relationship was like that of sisters. Lin Feng said, "We're planning to go to Suyu Lake to take a look. When we return from there, we'll go and visit you." Hua Lingxian said, "I don't have anything to do anyway, so I'll go to Suyu Lake with you." Since Hua Lingxian had said so, Lin Feng and the others naturally wouldn't refuse. Moreover, Hua Lingxian, a delicate beauty, was among the people traveling with them. Naturally, it was pleasing to the eye. Thus, Hua Lingxian joined the group. Everyone continued to walk in the direction of Suyu Lake. Another 2 days passed. Lin Feng and the others arrived at Suyu Lake. Suyu Lake was enveloped by a huge restriction. In that area, white fog rolled. The restriction, hidden in the white fog, was very powerful. If one wanted to smoothly pass through the area covered by the white fog to reach Suyu Lake, they would need to take a special passage. Otherwise, it was very likely that they would die under the attack of those restrictions. Don't underestimate those powerful restrictions. Those restrictions were set up by many demon gods at their peak. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to resist those restrictions at all. However, there was a special passage that was very safe. One just had to hand the token over to the guardian. The fire Qilin and the others couldn't pass without the token, so they waited outside for Lin Feng. As for Lin Feng, he took the jade talisman and headed to the entrance of the passage. There were dozens of cultivators guarding there. Lin Feng handed the jade talisman to a cultivator. After the cultivator looked at the jade talisman, he let them pass. Lin Feng entered the passage. The passage was enveloped by a powerful array formation and would not be attacked by the restrictions in the white fog area. The passage was about 10 miles long. It wasn't too far. After Lin Feng passed through the passage, he finally arrived at Suyu Lake. The area of Suyu Lake wasn't very big. It was only about 100 mu of land. Lin Feng flew to the middle of Suyu Lake. On the way here, the fire Qilin and the others had already told Lin Feng a lot about Suyu Lake. When he arrived at Suyu Lake, he floated in the middle of Suyu Lake. Then, he carefully looked at the surface of Suyu Lake. When the time came, he would be able to sense the specific situation inside. Lin Feng followed the method described by the fire Qilin and the others. He looked at the surface of Suyu Lake. The surface of Suyu Lake was like a mirror. At the very beginning, Lin Feng didn't see anything, but as time passed, Lin Feng realized that in a flash there were some images in the lake. It was a mountain range. It was a very ancient mountain range. It was shaped like a huge dragon that lived on the ground. He didn't know where it was. Looking into the distance, he could see endless forests, lakes, plains, deserts, and ancient cities. Is this a mysterious world? Lin Feng couldn't help but mutter to himself. Chapter 5098. Lin Feng didn't dare to rashly jump to a conclusion because he had heard Fire Qilin, Feng Yarao, and the others talk about the illusory world that appeared in the lake. If it was a real world, it would be fine. If it was an illusory world, once he communicated with it and entered that world, it would be a disastrous thing. Lin Feng didn't try to communicate with that world. He was still observing that world, hoping to find some clues. Lin Feng saw the first ancient city, but the ancient city was a little far from him. Therefore, he couldn't see the specific situation of the ancient city clearly. However, the ancient city was getting closer and closer. Not long after, he could see the full appearance of the ancient city. Everything in this world was like a landscape painting, slowly unfolding, and then showing Lin Feng, a dilapidated ancient city. When Lin Feng saw the full appearance of the ancient city, he couldn't help but mutter to himself. He frowned slightly. It was actually a dilapidated ancient city. This was something that Lin Feng didn't expect. Looking from the outside, the ancient city was perfect without any signs of dilapidation. But looking from the inside, the streets and houses in the ancient city had long been destroyed. There were even many skeletons on the ground. The scene changed quickly. Not long after, Lin Feng saw the second ancient city, which was still a dilapidated ancient city. In the following scenes, Lin Feng saw a world full of death aura. The various ancient cities were already dilapidated, and there were countless skeletons. Although there were still some creatures in the mountains, grasslands, deserts, lakes, and other places, they were only some low-level creatures, not powerful cultivators. A destroyed world. Lin Feng muttered to himself. This world was huge, but it was destroyed. Dong, dong, dong. Suddenly, Lin Feng heard a series of dull collision sounds coming from the depths of this world. Then, a huge figure appeared. When he saw that huge figure, Lin Feng couldn't help but be slightly surprised. Here, it wasn't that there was no one. That mysterious existence was at the end of the world. Due to the distance, they couldn't see his face. He held a huge hammer and seemed to be hammering something. Lin Feng tried to reach the end of this world. However, no matter how hard Lin Feng tried, he couldn't reach it. This left Lin Feng quite speechless. It also made Lin Feng feel very helpless. However, not long after, Lin Feng saw an ancient demonic pagoda flying out from the end of the world. Lin Feng was shocked. This was the Devil Pagoda before it was split into two. It was still complete. Now, he actually saw the figure of the demonic tower in this world. What did this mean? Could it be? Was that mysterious existence forging the Devil Pagoda? The origin of the Devil Pagoda was very mysterious. No one knew the origin of the Devil Pagoda. Of course, it was also possible that someone knew the origin of the demonic tower, but Lin Feng didn't know who knew the origin of the demonic tower. Devil Pagoda. It exuded a terrifying aura. Even though it had only just been forged, it was already unimaginably powerful. A world created by the Devil Pagoda. Just who is the existence at the end of the world? Lin Feng could not stop himself from mumbling. He was very interested in the mysterious existence at the end of the world. He wanted to know the identity of the mysterious existence. Unfortunately, the mysterious existence had never appeared. Lin Feng knew the world within the lake must be a real world. However, he did not know where it was. Lin Feng had no intentions of entering the world. It hadn't been easy for him to reach the undying plane. Lin Feng did not know what would happen after entering the world. If he could not return to the undying plane, wouldn't that be a tragedy? Lin Feng did not want that to happen. The Devil Pagoda flew through the void. Next, it furiously devoured all the powers within the world. The power of death, the power of darkness, the power of light, and so on. All the powers. The Devil Pagoda furiously devoured them all. As the demonic tower absorbed all kinds of energy, its power continued to increase. By devouring the various powers, the Devil Pagoda completed its transformation. Suddenly, the ground cracked open, and an item flew out from the ground. The item furiously slammed against the Devil Pagoda. Lin Feng turned to look at the item, and a look of shock appeared on his face. The item that had flown out from the ground was actually a beast claw. The beast claw was very special and strange. It was covered in golden scales. Seeing the beast claw, Lin Feng could not stop himself from revealing a puzzled look. That beast claw. Just what kind of creature did it belong to? Why was there only one claw left? Had that living being died? Was there only one claw left in this world? Perhaps that was a real possibility. The beast claw fought against the Devil Pagoda. The beast claw wanted to destroy the Devil Pagoda, but failed. The Devil Pagoda wanted to destroy the beast claw and devour it. However, the Devil Pagoda failed as well. Neither the Devil Pagoda nor the beast claw could do anything to the other party. It's Li Jianli's beast claw. I never thought that Li Jianli's beast claw would still exist in this world. I wonder if this scene in front of me is something from this era. Perhaps it's something from a previous era. I've never heard of a creature like Li Jianli appearing in this era. At this moment, the demon lord's voice suddenly resounded in Lin Feng's mind. Li Jianli? What the hell is that? Lin Feng could not help but ask curiously. This was the first time he had heard of a creature like Li Jianli. However, from the tone of the demon lord's voice, it could be deduced. Li Jianli was a creature like that. It should be an extremely terrifying existence. But what kind of existence was it? Lin Feng did not know for the time being. Yao Jun said, Li Jianli is said to be a creature born in thunder and lightning. It is born to control the power of thunder and lightning, and the power of thunder and lightning is almost the most destructive power. Therefore, Li Jianli's attack power is very strong. Moreover, Li Jianli's life force is incomparably tenacious, almost unkillable. This kind of creature is not particularly big in appearance, about the size of an ordinary leopard. It does not have a specific shape, and it is said that it can change into any shape at will. Lin Feng asked doubtfully, since he doesn't have a specific form, how can you tell that the claw is Li Jianli's? Chapter 5099. After hearing the demon lord's explanation, Lin Feng could basically confirm that the claw was left behind by Li Jianrong. However, no matter who left it behind, it was something that happened countless years ago. It wasn't something that happened in the present, so it was impossible for the claw to come to this space-time. In fact, Lin Feng was a little disappointed because he was still hoping to see the time reversal world in the lake. Dreams were beautiful, but reality was cruel. Lin Feng wasn't able to see the time reversal world in the virtual world. It was just his wishful thinking, so he could only sigh. It seemed that it was impossible to enter the time reversal world from the first ancestral land of the demon race. As for the scenes he saw, he would just treat it as a show. Lin Feng couldn't enter that world, and it was most likely destroyed. What was the difference between entering that world and seeking death? Lin Feng was about to leave, but at that moment, Lin Feng suddenly heard a voice. Take me out, take me out, take me out, the voice said. After hearing the voice, Lin Feng couldn't help but be stunned. That voice, where did it come from? Why was it ringing in his mind? Lin Feng asked, Demon Lord, did you hear a voice? Voice. What voice? The Demon Lord asked, puzzled. Take me out. That voice is repeating those words, said Lin Feng. The Demon Lord frowned slightly, then said, could it be related to what you saw in the lake? That Lin Feng frowned, because what the Demon Lord said was very possible. If that was the case, who was transmitting the voice to him? And who could transmit the voice to him through that illusory world? Why did it sound so unbelievable? However, that voice did exist, and Lin Feng heard it very clearly. How do I take you out? Lin Feng asked. The voice didn't answer Lin Feng, which made Lin Feng speechless. You asked me to take you out, but you're not saying anything now. What the hell are you trying to do? If you don't say anything, I'm leaving. Lin Feng said, take me out, take me out, take me out. The voice once again rang in Lin Feng's mind. Lin Feng said, how do I take you out? You should tell me. If you don't say anything, how do I take you out? Take me out, take me out, take me out. The voice was still repeating those 4 words. Fuck is not a brand, right? It's not transmitting voice at all. Lin Feng couldn't help but mutter to himself. Otherwise, why would the voice keep repeating the same sentence? It was too suspicious. Lin Feng decided to leave, but as he was leaving, the voice resonated in Lin Feng's head again. You're right. You're right. You're right. Lin Feng decided to leave, but as he was leaving, the voice resonated in his head again. Don't go, take me out, take me out, take me out. This time, the words spoken by the voice were slightly different from before. That was because the voice had added the words, don't go. It's not a brand. Lin Feng was surprised. The voice didn't seem to be a brand, and it was really talking to him. For some reason, it didn't tell him how to take the voice out. The situation in front of him was really strange, and it made his hair stand on end. However, Lin Feng wasn't frightened. He thought for a moment, then said, all right, I'll take you out. You can come out now. After Lin Feng said that, the surface of the lake started to ripple violently. The world that appeared on the surface of the lake started to distort, and an illusory space-time gate was constructed in that world. At that moment, Lin Feng saw it. The claw of Li Jian had actually rushed into the space-time gate and disappeared without a trace. At the same time, the world that appeared on the surface of the lake disappeared as well. Above the lake, a space-time gate was formed. The space-time gate was emitting violent waves as it opened bit by bit. This space-time gate can't be the gate that appeared in that world, right? Lin Feng couldn't help but wonder. He felt like he was going crazy. That world, it was a world from countless years ago, or even several epochs ago. Logically speaking, that world belonged to the past space-time, and it didn't have any intersection with the present space-time. Therefore, the space-time gate condensed from the past space-time couldn't be connected to the present space-time. However, what was the actual situation? It was a space-time gate that was constructed between 2 different space-time worlds. It was normal for something like this to happen in a dream. However, something like this had happened in reality. It was really he couldn't understand what was happening in front of him. Perhaps it was because he wasn't strong enough. Only when one's strength reached a certain level would one be able to understand some things that seemed inconceivable. However, Lin Feng's cultivation hadn't reached that level yet. Therefore, there were some things that Lin Feng couldn't understand. At this moment, a bolt of lightning suddenly descended from the void. The bolt of lightning directly struck towards the space-time gate. Bang! The bolt of lightning struck the space-time gate fiercely. The space-time gate trembled violently, and it seemed like it was about to dissipate. Boom! 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 At that moment, bolts of lightning fell from the sky one after another, heading straight for the gate of time and space. the bolts of lightning struck the space-time gate, and the space-time gate was about to be completely destroyed. Lin Feng was shocked. Could it be that the way of heaven didn't allow the space-time gate to appear? Thinking about it, that might be the reason. After all, the space-time gate was a space-time gate that appeared countless years ago, or even several epochs ago. It shouldn't appear in the present space-time. Therefore, the way of heaven wanted to destroy the space-time gate. Just when Lin Feng thought that the space-time gate was about to be destroyed by the way of heaven, suddenly something shocking happened. The space-time gate actually solidified again. The way of heaven seemed to have sensed all of this, so it descended an even more powerful bolt of lightning. However, it still couldn't destroy the space-time gate. The space-time gate. It opened quickly. Swoosh. The next moment, Chapter 5100, that golden light turned into a claw. It was Li Jianli's claw. When he saw Li Jianli's claw, Lin Feng's face showed an incomparably moved expression. Li Jianli's claw actually appeared in this space-time. It was really incredible, but everything was true. After Li Jianli's claw appeared, it directly swept towards the void. The power of thunder and lightning that had just condensed in the void was instantly shattered by Li Jianli's claw. And at this time, Lin Feng clearly felt that there seemed to be a more powerful attack brewing. Although that attack had not yet condensed, Lin Feng hurriedly flew towards the shore, so as not to be implicated. At this time, beams of death light condensed in the void one after another. The dense beams of death light all slashed towards Li Jianli's claw. Each beam of death light contained a power that could destroy heaven and earth. The heavenly Tao was determined to destroy Li Jianli's claw. Li Jianli's claw violated the laws of heaven and earth, coming from the past to the present. If it could really withstand the attack of the heavenly Tao and continue to live in this space-time, it would be really terrifying. Facing the attack of the death beams, Li Jianli's claws swept towards the death beams. One after another, the sound of collision rang out. Li Jianli's claws collided with the death beams, one after another. Every time they collided, a terrifying shockwave that was enough to destroy the world was sent out. Even the void was shattered by the impact. The death light beams could not do anything to Li Jianli's claw. Then, all kinds of attacks were brewed, all slashing towards Li Jianli's claw. Li Jianli's claw collided with the various attacks condensed by the heavenly Tao. The attacks condensed by the heavenly Tao were strong, but they could not destroy Li Jianli's claw. I travel through time and space. Heaven and earth decay, but I am immortal. Heaven and earth perish, but I am immortal. At this time, a low voice resounded between heaven and earth. This was the voice of Li Jianli's claw. It was really strange that a claw could speak, but the world of cultivators was like this. Strange things of every description emerged one after another. So it was acceptable for such a thing to happen. In the end, Li Jianho's claws blocked all the attacks of the heavenly Tao. The invisible pressure that lingered in the void dissipated. Tian Dao no longer attacked Li Diana's claws. This was similar to a cultivator's tribulation. The lightning tribulation condensed by the heavenly Tao attempted to destroy the cultivators. Some cultivators died in the lightning tribulation. However, some cultivators managed to successfully overcome their lightning tribulations. Right now, Li Jianho's claws had resisted the attack of the heavenly Tao, which was similar to the tribulation. Li Jianli's claws quickly flew towards Lin Feng. Then, a voice came from Li Jianli's claws. "Kid, you have the aura of the Devil Tower on you. Could it be that you have some connection with the Devil Tower? Let me search your soul and see if there are any memories related to the Demon Tower." Hearing Li Jiansu's words, Lin Feng suddenly had the urge to vomit blood. "I helped you come from that world to this space-time, and you want to search my soul?" Wasn't this a classic case of biting the hand that fed him? Lin Feng had the urge to slap Li Jianhou to death. However, Lin Feng didn't dare to show his true thoughts. Li Jianhou was simply too strong. He couldn't compete with Li Jianhou. I can tell you whatever you want to know. Don't search my soul. Have you forgotten? I played an extremely important role in the reason you were able to come from that world to this space-time. A powerful existence, like you shouldn't do something like biting the hand that fed you, right? Lin Feng hurriedly said. Li Jianhou said, "Don't you know that Li Jianhou only cares about benefits and not friendship? That's why I've long since forgotten about your kindness to me." That's possible. The corner of Lin Feng's mouth couldn't help but twitch slightly. As the saying goes, shameless people are invincible. The current Li Jianhou, he gave off such a feeling. However, this guy only had one claw left. He didn't even have a face. What face did he have? Li Jianhou quickly flew towards Lin Feng, as if he really wanted to search Lin Feng's soul. If Li Jianhou were to do so, it would be an extremely bad thing. First, when Li Jianhou's soul was searched, his soul would suffer irreparable damage. Second, Lin Feng had too many secrets. If Li Jianhou were to search his soul and find out about Lin Feng's many secrets, he might kill Lin Feng and take all of Lin Feng's secrets for himself. This was something that could happen. Therefore, he had to guard against Li Jianhou's soul search. Lin Feng hurriedly said, "The demon pagoda is now divided into two, and both of them have given birth to their own gods. Right now, the two demon pagodas are spying on each other. They want to devour each other and merge into one. However, neither of the two demon pagodas can do anything to each other. Therefore, for now, the two demon pagodas are in a situation where they are evenly matched. And I do have some connections with the demon pagodas. My two ancestors controlled the demon pagodas one after another. Later, it was said that the fall of my two ancestors was greatly related to the demon pagodas. Back then, I helped the Snow Clan suppress the first demon pagoda. So, if you really want to talk about it, there is only resentment and hatred between me and the demon pagodas. That's all there is between me and the demon pagodas. I've told you everything I know. You won't search my soul again, right?" After he finished speaking, Lin Feng looked at Li Jianhou's claw with some apprehension. If this guy really bit the hand that fed him, then he would join forces with the demon lord to deal with this guy. Although he still might not be a match for this guy, it shouldn't be too difficult to escape, right? Lin Feng heaved a sigh of relief. After hearing his words, Li Jianhou's claw stopped in midair. It didn't target Lin Feng anymore. It seemed to believe what Lin Feng had said a moment before. And Lin Feng really hadn't lied to this guy. Everything he said was true. "Do you know where the demon pagodas are?" Li Jianhou asked. Lin Feng heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that Li Jianhou wouldn't attack him. Lin Feng adjusted his emotions and said, "I really don't know where the two demon pagodas are, but I do know that they are in the undying world. I saw them last time in the Little Western Horizon region." "Okay," Li Jianhou's claw said. Then it tore through the void and disappeared. Chapter 5101. Li Jianli's claw left. Although they were in the first ancestral land of the demon race, Lin Feng believed that if it wanted to leave, it would have its own way. It was hard to imagine how powerful Li Jianli's claw was. It was definitely a terrifying existence. Now that it had left, Lin Feng could finally relax. This time, when he came to the Suyu Lake, he didn't see the time reversal world. He had actually brought Li Jianli's claw to this world. It was really strange. Li Jianli's claw didn't attack Lin Feng, which meant that there was some connection between them. In fact, Lin Feng was very curious. What kind of existence could kill Li Jianli? This was destined to be a secret, unless Li Jianli's claw told him what had happened. Lin Feng didn't need to stay here any longer. He went back the way he came and met up with the Fire Qilin and the others outside. How was it? Did you find anything? The Fire Qilin asked. Lin Feng shook his head and said, I saw a world, but I didn't enter it. Lin Feng didn't tell them about Li Jianli's claw. There was no need to let the Fire Qilin and the others know about it. If they didn't know, they could just pretend that nothing had happened. If they knew, who knew what kind of disaster it would bring to them? Of course, this kind of thing could happen. Who knew what kind of personality Li Jianli's claw had? Then let's go back, Hua Xianxian said with a smile. She had invited Lin Feng and the others to go to Feng Shi Mountain. Now that things here were over, they could go to Feng Shi Mountain with Hua Xianxian and visit the Demon Empress. The group left. They talked and laughed along the way. However, when he was halfway there, he was surrounded by people. There were about 100 cultivators surrounding Lin Feng and the others. They were aggressive and looked at Lin Feng and the others indifferently. The leader was none other than Jin Zicheng, who had been knocked unconscious by the Fire Qilin's brick. This guy was obviously here for revenge. Jin Zicheng, what is the meaning of this? Hua Lingxian asked. Jin Zicheng said coldly, Hua Lingxian, this is between me and this group of Jojo cultivators. It has nothing to do with you, so you better get out of the way. Otherwise, don't blame me for not giving you face. Hua Lingxian actually knew that Jin Zicheng had always rejected the demon cultivators of the 9 regions. Therefore, she said, don't go too far. Even if you have an extraordinary status, if you go too far, you won't be able to explain yourself. It's not up to you to tell me what to do, Jin Zicheng said with a cold smile. Clearly, he did not want to give Hua Lingxian any face. Jin Zicheng no longer had any scruples. He only wanted to teach these cultivators a lesson. At the very least, he wanted to cripple their limbs. Otherwise, how could he vent the hatred in his heart? Feng Yarao said, Lingxian, don't get involved in this matter. This is between us and Jin Zicheng. That's right. We should have settled this dispute long ago. Do you really think that we're easy to bully? The world is so big, and if we don't stay here, we'll have to find somewhere else to go. The Fire Qilin said with a cold smile. Jin Zicheng said, mockingly, you're really a group of ingrates. Have you forgotten the kindness of the demon ancestral land so quickly? You actually said such heartless words. The demon ancestral land shouldn't have taken in you ingrates. Little Peng King said indifferently, of course, we're very grateful to the higher-ups of the demon ancestral land for taking us in. However, there are some things that don't need to be said too clearly. If you say it too clearly, it won't be good for anyone's face. Hee hee, ingrates can always find a lot of reasons to defend themselves. Jin Zicheng continued to sneer. Ingrate was naturally an extremely unpleasant description. This fellow used the word ingrate to describe Little Rock King and the others. This was simply a great humiliation to Little Rock King and the others. Therefore, Little Rock King and the others' expressions were incomparably ugly. Little Peng King said, don't make the demon ancestral land sound too noble. There are so many demon cultivators from the lower realms who came to the undying realm. How many people did the demon ancestral land take in? Back then, we were only able to join the first ancestral land because my uncle gave us a primal chaos sacred stone. That's why the first ancestral land took us in. The first ancestral land of the demon race is only SOSO. Don't try to fish for fame. Sure enough, there was something fishy about this matter. Little Peng King said that if this matter was said too clearly, it wouldn't be good for anyone's face. Now that Little Peng King said this matter, it was obvious that he was ready to shed all pretense of cordiality. Jin Zichong knew about the rules of the demon ancestral land, but he hadn't thought that Great Peng King would take out something as precious as the primal chaos sacred stone. Unfortunately, he wasn't fated to have such a treasure. Jin Zichong was a bit depressed. Jin Zichong wondered if Little Peng King also had such a treasure. After crippling Little Peng King, he would be able to rob him of all his treasures. Thinking about this, Jin Zichong suddenly smiled coldly and said, "Isn't it normal for you to contribute some treasures? You have to pay immortal stones to stay outside. Do you think the Demon Ancestral Land is a charity organization? What kind of riffraff is allowed to stay in our #1 ancestral land?" Little Peng King smiled coldly and said, "I didn't say that. This is a matter of mutual benefit. It's good for both sides. Therefore, we're not as bad as you say. Wait until my uncle and the Peacock King come out of seclusion. We'll leave the first ancestral land, and we won't contact each other anymore." Hee, what kind of place do you think the first ancestral land is? You think it's a place where you can come and go as you please? If you want to leave, you have to cripple your own cultivation, and I'll let you go. Jin Zichong looked at Little Peng King and the others indifferently. This guy was quite ruthless. He was actually asking Little Peng King and the others to cripple their cultivation. Jin Zichong, do you really think we're easy to bully? We tolerated you before, not because we were afraid of you. Little Peng King said coldly. Chapter 5102. Since Jin Zichong had put it this way, there was only one way left to fight. The Fire Qilin said, "Last time, I should have crippled a coward like you. If I had crippled a coward like you, there wouldn't have been so much trouble. I really regret it. If the heavens gave me another chance, I would have used a brick to turn you into an idiot." After hearing the Fire Qilin's words, Jin Zichong felt his forehead and the back of his head begin to hurt again. He didn't know if it was caused by psychological factors, but a burst of pain came from Jin Zichong's forehead and the back of his head. Jin Zichong regarded this as a great humiliation. He tried hard not to think about being knocked out by the Fire Qilin with a brick, but now the Fire Qilin brought it up again. Jin Zichong couldn't help but think about what happened before. His eyes flashed with a sinister light. Now, in the first ancestral land of the demon race, there must be many people talking behind his back and mocking him. Thinking of this, Jin Zichong had an impulse to cut the Fire Qilin into pieces. He could just cripple the rest of the people in 9 regions. But the Fire Qilin, it must die. Do it. No need to be polite. Cripple all of them. Jin Zichong waved his hand and said, "Yes." After receiving the order, the experts brought by Jin Zichong rushed toward Lin Feng and the others like wolves and tigers. When Jin Zichong and the others came out of the central ancient city, such a large group naturally attracted a lot of attention. Therefore, many cultivators followed them out and wanted to see what was going on. These cultivators stood in the distance to watch the show. They had heard that Jin Zichong was knocked out by the Fire Qilin with a brick, and this matter had become a joke. Jin Zichong was a narrow-minded person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. In the eyes of the onlookers, since Jin Zichong had decided to take action, the cultivators of the 9 states' macro world would suffer today. Isn't Jin Zichong too brazen? Does he really dare to cripple the cultivators of 9 regions' world? Isn't he afraid of being punished by the higher-ups? A cultivator said. Even now, he still didn't understand what Jin Zichong was thinking. A cultivator said, "What is Jin Zichong afraid of? His talent was great, his cultivation was powerful, and he was of noble birth. The rock demon deity, one of the 3 great demon deities, was his ancestor. If the practitioners of the 9 states' macro world were destroyed, what was done could not be undone." At that time, The higher-ups would probably turn a blind eye to it. After all, they would not destroy Jin Zicheng for a few useless people. Of course, when the time comes, Jin Zicheng may be punished, but this punishment will definitely not be too heavy. And at that time, the punishment will only be to block the public's mouth. When the heat of this matter dies down, Jin Zicheng will be able to swagger out again. Another cultivator said, to put it bluntly, the first ancestral land of the demon race is still the world dominated by the demon race of the undying realm. The demon race cultivators from other worlds are just living under someone else's roof here, and their status is not high. If the people of 9 regions are really reduced to such a miserable state, they can only blame it on natural selection. The law of heaven and earth is the law of survival of the fittest. Where there are people, there will be Jianghu. If you are eliminated, you will be eliminated. This cultivator's words received the approval of many people, so many cultivators nodded in agreement. At this time, a young demon race cultivator said, I heard that the Rock King and the Peacock King have extraordinary cultivation. If they come out of seclusion and know that the people of 9 regions have been crippled, I wonder what they will do. Someone else said, with the 3 great demon deities in charge, who would dare to cause trouble, unless they don't want to live anymore. The Rock King and the Peacock King are smart people, so they should know what to do. While the surrounding cultivators were discussing spiritedly, the cultivators brought by Jin Zicheng had already surrounded Lin Feng and the others. Hua Lingxian was very worried about Lin Feng and the others, but she couldn't stop Jin Zicheng. Hua Lingxian was a good person, so she chose to fight alongside Lin Feng and the others. Who's afraid of who? There's only one word, and that's fight. The fire Qilin sneered and directly rushed out. Then, the fire Qilin's body transformed into its true body. Endless flames curled around it. The fire Qilin's fighting strength immediately increased by more than 3 times. A human body was a great restriction for the fire Qilin. The fire Qilin rushed into the crowd and fought with a group of demon race cultivators. The fire Qilin could send a powerful demon race cultivator flying with a single claw, use magic treasures to kill him. Jin Zicheng said coldly. The cultivators quickly took out their magic treasures and controlled them to attack the fire Qilin. The magic treasures were very powerful. Naturally, everyone couldn't help but worry for the fire Qilin. However, at this time, the flames around the fire Qilin's body twisted and turned into 4 shields. Qilin Shield. This was an extremely powerful defensive technique mastered by the fire Qilin clan. When the Qilin Shield was used, it could condense 4 shields. Every single one of the shields. The defensive power was very shocking. When everyone's magic treasures attacked, they were all blocked by the fire Qilin's Qilin Shield. Under the protection of the Qilin Shield, the fire Qilin's ferocity was monstrous. It continued to attack the demon race cultivators. The fire Qilin had the bloodline of a holy beast. Moreover, it was in existence from the 9 states. Naturally, its fighting strength was extremely heaven-defying. Swoosh! Jin Zicheng looked at the scene in front of him with a gloomy expression. He took out a silver flying sword, planning to launch a sneak attack on the fire Qilin at any time. The silver flying sword's aura was abnormally terrifying. It seemed to be a holy weapon. He didn't expect this person to have such a treasure. If the fire Qilin was ambushed, the fire Qilin would be in trouble. After Little Rock King saw the situation, he immediately took out the divine mirror. He held the divine mirror in his hand. Powerful dermic powers flowed into the divine mirror. With the influx of dermic powers, the divine mirror was activated by Little Rock King. A beam of light shot out from the divine mirror. The beam of light swept towards Jin Zicheng, who was preparing to ambush the fire Qilin. After seeing the beam of light sweeping towards him, Jin Zicheng's expression changed abruptly. He felt an extremely dangerous aura from the beam of light. That aura made his expression change slightly. Chapter 50-103. Clang! Jin Zicheng's silver flying sword collided with the attack of the Empyrean mirror. Suddenly, there was a clanging sound. The silver flying sword was so powerful that it blocked the attack of the Empyrean mirror. These two treasures were both sacred artifacts. Thus, it would not be easy to use treasures to restrain the other party. Jin Zicheng, I would like to experience your divine ability. Little Rock King said coldly, You? Trash like you dares to challenge me? Are you worthy? Jin Zicheng looked at Little Rock King mockingly. Although he was jealous of Little Rock King's talent and luck, Jin Zicheng was very disdainful of Little Rock King's strength. It was no wonder that Jin Zicheng was so disdainful. It was mainly because when Little Rock King came to the Undying Realm, his realm was indeed far from Jin Zicheng's. Although Little Rock King's improvement was very fast, Jin Zicheng's strength was also constantly increasing. So Jin Zicheng naturally looked down on Little Rock King's strength. After the battle, we'll know if you're qualified to say such words. Little Rock King looked at Jin Zicheng indifferently. His battle intent continued to rise. Many people were very surprised. Little Rock King wanted to challenge Jin Zicheng. They were both cultivators of the rock race, but the difference in their cultivation time was too great. Compared to Jin Zicheng, Little Rock King's only advantage was that he came from the 9 provinces. In fact, many people said that the cultivators of the 9 provinces were different from the cultivators of other worlds, but even Little Rock King himself did not know what this difference was. Not only did Little Rock King not know, Lin Feng also did not know. But regardless of whether he knew or not, there were definitely many differences. Perhaps this difference could be of help to Little Rock King. Not far away, a group of cultivators was attacking the fire Qilin. After the fire Qilin transformed into a sacred beast, its battle strength was really powerful. It wandered in the crowd, and one cultivator after another was beaten half to death by the fire Qilin. As for Lin Feng, he did not make a move at all. He was watching the show. Feng Yaorao, Princess Shui Yao, Little Moon, and Hua Lingxian did not make a move either. Women should live beautifully. Therefore, it was better to stand aside and watch the show. Now, everyone's eyes were on the Little Rock King. The fire Qilin should have no problem dealing with the Demon Clan cultivators who were besieging it. The main thing was that the situation on Little Rock King's side made everyone quite uncertain. Jin Zicheng had been famous for a long time and was very powerful. Little Rock King was a rising star. Although they came from the same race, there were probably many aspects that were different. For example, bloodline, talent, cultivation techniques, mentality, and combat experience. Many intangible aspects could often seriously affect the specific situation of this battle. Since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Jin Zicheng looked at Little Rock King with an indifferent expression, then unleashed a series of incantation gestures. Those spells all flew into the silver flying sword. As a sacred level treasure, there should be a set of sword control techniques passed down. In fact, the epic war spear that Lin Feng had obtained previously had a matching spear technique. Every top-grade treasure had its own set of incantations. For example, Lin Feng's Hell King's Bell also had a matching spell to activate it. This way, the treasure's strongest power could be unleashed. Lin Feng really wanted to learn a spear skill that was compatible with the time spear. That way, he would be able to use the time spear as much as possible. But for now, Lin Feng hadn't obtained a matching spear technique for the epic war spear. At this moment, after Jin Zicheng used the sword control technique. The silver flying sword actually split into 8. The 8 silver flying swords split into 8 directions and surrounded Little Rock King in the middle. Each of the silver flying swords vibrated with extremely terrifying power, and each of the silver flying swords seemed to be real. It was very difficult to distinguish which of the 8 silver flying swords were real and which were fake. Slash. Jin Zichong sneered, and the 8 silver flying swords all slashed towards Little Rock King. That silver flying sword is called the 8 Extreme Sword. It's rumored that it's an ultimate treasure passed down by the 8 Extreme Sacred Master. The 8 Extreme Sacred Master was a titled god. The top expert of this era, Jin Zichong, seemed to be able to rise because he obtained the legacy of the 8 Extreme Sacred Master. At this moment, a cultivator on the outside said, obviously, that cultivator recognized the origin of the silver flying sword. No wonder this Jin Zichong knows so many powerful techniques. He actually had such a fortuitous encounter. Someone exclaimed. Then someone said, I wonder if Little Rock King can last 10 rounds. 10 rounds? I think 3 rounds will be enough. A cultivator shook his head and said, his tone was full of contempt for Little Rock King. There weren't many cultivators who thought highly of Little Rock King. However, Lin Feng thought highly of Little Rock King. He felt that Little Rock King wasn't an arrogant person. On the contrary, Little Rock King had always been humble. Since he dared to challenge the famous Jin Zichong, he must have some terrifying techniques. Just as the 8 silver flying swords were about to strike the Little Rock King, the space around the Little Rock King suddenly distorted. The flying swords were blocked by the distorted space. It's the use of the Tao of space. It seems that Little Rock King's fortuitous encounter over the years is quite good. He actually obtained the legacy of the Tao of space. Lin Feng couldn't help but be slightly surprised. The strongest Tao of space was the Tao of space passed down by the god of space. However, it was too difficult to obtain the Tao of space passed down by the god of space. Other than the god of space, there were many experts who created the Tao of space. Then, some of the Tao of space disappeared, while others were passed down. The Tao of space that Little Rock King obtained was a rather powerful Tao of space. After the distorted space blocked the attacks of the 8 flying swords, Little Rock King shook the Empyrean mirror in his hand. Suddenly, a strange thing happened. A mysterious world appeared in the Empyrean mirror. Next, a lot of white fog escaped from the mysterious world in the Empyrean mirror. The white fog was quite special. When the white fog escaped, it directly wrapped around the 8 flying swords. Then, the white fog wanted to pull the 8 flying swords into the world inside the Empyrean mirror. Jin Zichong's face couldn't help but sink when he saw this. Chapter 5104. What a powerful mirror! It wants to devour Jin Zichong's flying swords. I wonder if they'll actually be devoured in the end? A cultivator said, Jin Zichong's flying sword was naturally extremely powerful, but as the saying goes, everything has its nemesis. Now, Jin Zichong's flying sword seemed to be suppressed. Once it was devoured by the Empyrean mirror, it was very likely that he would no longer be able to control his flying sword. Many cultivators could see this, including Jin Zichong himself. Therefore, at this moment, Jin Zichong's expression was very ugly. Jin Zichong shot out runes, one after another. These runes entered the 8 flying swords. Suddenly, something amazing happened. The 8 flying swords tore through the shackles of the white mist and quickly flew together. The 8 flying swords rotated fiercely in the void. When Lin Feng saw the 8 swords, he couldn't help but be astonished. The 8 swords could turn into 8 trigrams. It seemed like they had fused with the strength of the 8 trigrams. They were much more powerful than before. Apart from that, they were even more mysterious and unfathomable. The 8 flying swords attacked Little Peng again. Little Rock King snorted coldly and took out the Tianshu mirror. The Tianshu mirror floated in the air. Next, the Empyrean mirror shot out one light beam after another, which collided with the 8 flying swords one after another. It immediately blocked the attacks of the 8 flying swords. The 8 flying swords were suppressed by the heavenly void mirror. The void mirror's level is clearly higher than Jin Zicheng's flying swords. A cultivator said, "That's right. If the 7 mirrors fuse into one, they can transform into an ancient weapon. Therefore, a single mirror is already a top-tier saint weapon. Saint weapons are also divided into different grades. Some are strong, some are weak. However, the silver flying sword is clearly much weaker than the void mirror. Little Peng King hasn't had the void mirror for long, so he hasn't been able to fully unleash the power of the void mirror. If Little Peng King truly grasps the void mirror and can gradually unleash the power of the void mirror, the state of fusing with the mirror will be terrifying," another cultivator said. At this moment, Little Peng himself quickly charged at Jin Zicheng. "Rock spreading wings!" Little Peng shouted, and a pair of rock wings appeared on his back. The rock wings directly attacked Jin Zicheng. So can I?" Jin Zicheng looked at Little Peng with disdain. A pair of rock wings also appeared on his back. Jin Zicheng's rock wings also flapped. Bang! 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 Little Rock King and Jin Zicheng's rock wings collided. Jin Zicheng's spiritual power was stronger than Little Rock King's, so Little Rock King was at a disadvantage. After a dozen rounds, Little Rock King was blown away by Jin Zicheng's wings. Gold wings slash. Jin Zicheng's expression was indifferent. He quickly caught up with Little Rock King, his wings flapping loudly. The pair of wings quickly slashed towards the Little Rock King like 2 invincible swords. When Little Peng retreated, he used the wings to protect his body. Actually, these were only energy wings. Little Peng and Jin Zicheng's race had evolved to the point where they didn't have real rock wings anymore. The technique they were using now was called energy wings. Although they were only energy wings, they weren't very different from real wings. Jin Zicheng's wings continuously attacked Little Peng's body. Little Peng was blown away again. He couldn't help but cough up blood in midair. When they saw this, Feng Yaorao and the others' expressions suddenly changed. Little Peng had only cultivated for a short period of time. Therefore, if they really fought, there was still a gap between him and Jin Zicheng. They couldn't help but worry about Little Peng. Lin Feng couldn't help but frown. When he saw Little Peng injured, Lin Feng was naturally very worried. However, Lin Feng felt that Little Peng definitely had some powerful techniques that he hadn't used yet. Little Peng is going to lose. One of the cultivators who were watching from afar said. Many people nodded. Little Peng was being suppressed too much. Therefore, it seemed that Little Peng's defeat was irreversible. Jin Zicheng looked at Little Rock King with an indifferent expression. He quickly flew towards the Little Rock King and continued attacking him with his wings. The Little Rock King was blown away again. This time, the Little Rock King's wings were about to break. The situation wasn't looking good for the Little Rock King. Lin Feng and the others looked glum. If this continued, things would get troublesome. "It's time to end this," Jin Zicheng said coldly. He was like a shadow, not giving the Little Rock King any chance to retaliate. He quickly arrived beside the Little Rock King, and his wings attacked the Little Rock King once again. This attack was even more powerful than the previous one. Jin Zicheng looked at the Little Rock King with disdain. In his opinion, the Little Rock King would not be able to withstand his attack. However, at that moment, 6 pairs of wings appeared on Little Peng's back. Cloud 90,000. shouted little Peng coldly. The 6 pairs of wings flapped at the same time. The 6 pairs of wings unleashed their power and collided with Jin Zicheng's pair of wings. Jin Zicheng couldn't defeat little Peng and was blown away. Cloud 90,000? How is that possible? How is that possible? How did you manage to learn that technique? That's impossible. It's already incomplete. Even if it's complete, very few people can learn it successfully. Even the ancestor of the Bestial God clan didn't manage to learn it. Kim Zicheng roared in disbelief after he was sent flying by the explosion. From his shocked expression, one could tell how powerful the Cloud Journey 90,000 was. Lin Feng had the impression that the Little Rock King's 6 pairs of wings were different from the great rock wings he had used at the beginning. That pair of wings seemed to contain a very special and very high level of energy. As one of the best techniques of the great Peng clan, Cloud 90,000 was different. The little Peng King has even learned the great Peng clan's long-lost innate techniques. How incredible! The cultivators in the distance couldn't help but cry out in surprise. "We're different," said little Peng indifferently. The Little Rock King said with an indifferent expression. The 6 pairs of wings on his back flapped, as if he had teleported. In a flash. Chapter 5105. Little Rock Kings, we are different, made Jin Zicheng's face turn extremely gloomy, causing countless people to ponder. Could the reason why Little Rock King was able to cultivate the cloudy 90,000 be related to Little Rock King's background? After all, it had always been said that cultivators from the 9 provinces' great world were different from cultivators from other worlds. However, no one knew exactly what was different about them. However, Little Rock King's words made many people feel that this might be the difference. Right now, Jin Zicheng was simply envious of Little Rock King. However, Jin Zicheng also knew that now was not the time to be envious, jealous, and hateful. This was because he had to block Little Rock King's attack. If he could not block Little Rock King's attack, it would be bad later. Jin Zicheng wanted to dodge Little Rock King's attack, so he executed Cloud Journey 90,000. Little Rock King's speed increased explosively, making it impossible for him to escape. This was one of the enhancements brought by Cloud Journey 90,000. Cloud Journey 90,000 could greatly enhance the user's speed. Jin Zicheng could only use his wings to protect his body. Bang! 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 Accompanied by the sounds of violent collisions one after another, Little Rock King's wings swept fiercely onto Jin Zicheng's body. The pair of wings that Jin Zicheng had conjured exploded. Jin Zicheng was even sent flying. Little Rock King quickly chased after Jin Zicheng. In an instant, he arrived in front of Jin Zicheng. 6 pairs of wings swept towards Jin Zicheng. This time, Jin Zicheng did not even have time to resist. 6 pairs of wings landed on Jin Zicheng's body. Ka-cha! Ka-cha! The sound of bones cracking could be heard. Who knew how many bones in Jin Zicheng's body were broken? With a plop, Jin Zicheng fell to the ground, and his body began to twitch violently. "Ah, this is impossible." Jin Zicheng roared loudly, unable to accept what was happening. He had always been a high and mighty existence. Now, he was actually defeated by a cultivator that he looked down on. Moreover, he was seriously injured. This time, Jin Zicheng had injured his origin and meridians. Even if the undying world had a lot of treasures, it was still not an easy thing for Jin Zicheng to fully recover. It would take many years. Most importantly, the injury to his heart was impossible to recover. Everyone knew. Kim Zicheng was probably crippled this time. Even if he recovered in the future, he might not be able to return to his peak. As for breaking through and reaching new heights, that would be even more difficult. Everyone was very clear about this. Goldie Chong Hen. He wished he could tear Little Rock King into pieces. But now, he could only think about it in his mind. You're still far from it. Facts have proven that people who talk big may not be really powerful. Little Rock King said indifferently. Wow. After being mocked by the Little Rock King, Jin Zichong could not take it anymore. He opened his mouth and spat out blood. This guy spat out 5 or 6 mouthfuls of blood in a row, and then directly fainted. His mental fortitude isn't up to standard. Lin Feng said. When some of the cultivators in the distance heard Lin Feng's words, they couldn't help but roll their eyes, no matter who was seriously injured. Moreover, it was an injury to their meridians and origin. After hearing the ridicule of others, they wouldn't be able to take it, right? How many people could calmly accept this kind of thing? There might be such people in the world, but they were as rare as phoenix feathers and Qilin horns. The battle on the Fire Qilin's side had also ended. When Jin Zichong was injured by the Little Rock King, the battle on the other side had already ended. More than 100 cultivators surrounded the Fire Qilin, but now there were already 40 to 50 people lying on the ground. The Fire Qilin was really fierce to actually injure so many cultivators. This was the Fire Qilin. Its methods were indeed very powerful. What a good Yunqing, 90,000. Powerful, powerful. Just as Lin Feng and the others were about to leave, a gloomy voice sounded out. Following that, a cultivator stepped out from the void. This was a middle-aged cultivator. When they saw this cultivator, many people revealed shocked expressions. This cultivator was called Jin Wusher. This person was a true immortal realm expert, one of the strongest experts of the great rock race. After seeing this person, many people fell silent. This was the upper echelon of the demon race's ancestral land. At this time, they naturally couldn't say anything. If they said something wrong, it wouldn't end well. Everyone was very clear about this. So, the cultivators who were watching the show from afar didn't dare to say anything. Senior. Little Rock King cupped his fists. Jin Wusher laughed coldly and said, "Don't bow to me. I can't stand your bow." After hearing Jin Wusher's words, Lin Feng couldn't help but raise his eyebrows slightly. Jin Wusher's attitude on this matter was already clear, but thinking about it carefully, Jin Wusher was someone on Jin Zichong's side after all. Wasn't it normal for him to side with Jin Zichong? Could it be that he had to side with Little Rock King? Obviously, this was impossible. Little Rock King naturally wouldn't do something like sticking his warm face to someone else's cold, but Little Rock King looked at Lin Feng and the others and said, "Let's go." The few of them nodded, but at this time, Jin Wusher said coldly, "You injured people to this extent, and you're just going to leave like this?" Little Rock King asked, "Then what does Senior want to do?" Jin Wusher said, "I won't make things difficult for you. Tell me the cultivation technique of Cloud Journey 90,000, and I can let bygones be bygones and let you go." After hearing Jin Wusher's words, many people despised Jin Wusher. This guy wanted to snatch someone else's top-notch absolute art, yet he said it in such a dignified manner. His skin was really too thick. However, sometimes, when these top-notch experts were really shameless, even ordinary cultivators couldn't compare to them. Little Rock King was naturally someone with a temper. He had been humiliated, bullied, and oppressed. Now that he had resisted, in the eyes of countless people, it was a battle of an egg striking a rock. But he had won. This was a battle of dignity. Now that he had won, this kind of true, immortal expert actually interfered. The various great powers had a rule that true immortals couldn't interfere with the grudges between the younger generation of cultivators or between the younger generation of cultivators. The various great powers abided by this rule. But now, A true immortal from the Yao clan's ancestral land wanted to interfere in the dispute between the disciples of the Yao clan. It was truly shameless. However, if the other party really insisted on interfering in this matter, it would be something that made others feel helpless. After all, no one could restrain the other party's actions. Chapter 5106. Are you trying to force me to hand over the Cloud Journey 90,000? Little Rock King asked. Jean Wusher said, if you make a mistake, you need to be punished. And there are many ways to punish. I didn't punish you physically because you are a descendant of the great rock race. You should be grateful for this. Asking you to hand over the Cloudy 90,000 is also for the sake of our great rock race. After hearing Jean Wusher's words, Lin Feng couldn't help but roll his eyes. Lin Feng thought that his skin was thick enough, but compared to Jean Wusher, the difference was like heaven and earth. How shameless must one be to be able to say what Jean Wusher just said? Many people muttered in their hearts, but they didn't dare to say anything. Who would dare to offend the higher-ups of the demon race's first ancestral land? Wouldn't that be courting death? Little Rock King said, if it was any other time, you want to cultivate the Cloudy 90,000. Naturally, I can tell you, because I'm not a selfish person. But today, I won't take out the Cloudy 90,000 because your words just now really disgusted me. Hearing this, Jean Wusher's face immediately darkened, and he looked at Little Rock King with a cold gaze. If it wasn't for your uncle's face, do you think you can still stand and talk to me? But back then, when I said those words just now, your uncle's face was no longer enough. Jean Wusher looked at Little Rock King coldly, then shouted, kneel down. After his voice fell, a terrifying pressure was emitted from Jean Wusher's body. That terrifying pressure directly suppressed Little Rock King. Little Rock King is in for it, although his cultivation is not bad. In front of an expert like Jean Wusher, it's nothing. He can't resist the pressure released by Jean Wusher at all. After seeing Jean Wusher release a powerful pressure to suppress Little Rock King, a cultivator immediately said. The others nodded. It was indeed as the cultivator had said. The pressure released by a true immortal was very difficult to resist. Moreover, it was said that Jean Wusher was no ordinary true immortal. He was an expert in the second major realm of the true immortal realm, the Tao immortal realm. Such a cultivation level was simply too terrifying. In the eyes of many cultivators, such a cultivator did not even need to make a move. Just his aura alone was enough to suppress Little Rock King. In fact, even some virtual immortal realm cultivators would not be able to do so, let alone Little Rock King. Facing the suppression of a Tao immortal expert's aura, it was also unbearable. Little Peng King's expression became extremely ugly. The other party was a Tao immortal expert, yet he was so shameless. This made Little Peng King feel very helpless. In fact, in the world of cultivators, the most terrifying thing was those powerful and thick-skinned cultivators. They often did things without any scruples. Those who were strong and wanted to save face were much less threatening because of their desire to save face. Most of the time, these cultivators would not make a move. It was a pity. Jean Wusher was not a person who cared about his reputation. Just as the terrifying pressure was about to suppress Little Peng King's body, Lin Feng stretched out his hand and placed it on Little Peng King's shoulder. Instantly, all the oppressive aura dissipated. The pressure disappeared. Someone said in surprise, "What's going on? Why did the pressure suddenly disappear?" Then, someone asked doubtfully. Everyone revealed an incomparably surprised expression. They did not know why the pressure had disappeared. Naturally, they did not associate it with Lin Feng. After all, Lin Feng was too young. Moreover, his cultivation level did not seem to be very high either. So, Many people naturally looked down on Lin Feng. Only those who knew Lin Feng knew why the pressure that filled the world and suppressed little Peng King suddenly disappeared. However, they did not make a sound. Instead, they waited and watched. You must be very tired after a big battle. Rest. Lin Feng said. Little Peng King nodded, and then retreated. Jean Wusher's face could not help but darken slightly. The pressure he released suddenly disappeared, and he actually did not notice what was going on. Now that he saw Lin Feng walk out, Jean Wusher could not help but think in his heart, could it be? The pressure disappeared. Could it be related to this young human cultivator in front of him? After this thought was born, it was quickly rejected by Jean Wusher. Because this was too inconceivable, too inconceivable. He could not believe the reason in his heart. As a Tao Immortal level expert, you should have the dignity of a Tao Immortal level expert. As a Tao Immortal level expert, you actually attacked a junior. Isn't that too degrading? No matter what, the Great Peng clan still has a demon god level expert. You are not only embarrassing yourself, but also the reputation of the demon god and the Great Peng clan. Lin Feng said indifferently. As soon as he said these words, everyone's expression could not help but change slightly. A young cultivator like Lin Feng actually dared to use such a tone to speak to a Tao Immortal level expert. It was completely as if he was teaching the other party a lesson. This made everyone feel that it was inconceivable. Everyone could not help but have the same thought in their hearts. This guy, where did he get the courage to say such words? Wasn't he thinking that he was dying too slowly? Did he want to reincarnate as soon as possible? And when he heard Lin Feng's words, Jean Wusher's face immediately revealed an angry gaze. A young junior was actually teaching him a lesson in front of everyone. This was really preposterous. This was completely not putting him in his eyes. This infuriated Jean Wusher. Jean Wusher was arrogant. He even looked down on the demon race cultivators who had ascended to the undying realm, not to mention the human race cultivators. In his eyes, the human race cultivators seemed to always be associated with the word weak and could not be separated. Although there would occasionally be a few experts in the human race, it was only occasionally and not universally. In his eyes, Lin Feng was equivalent to a low-level cultivator from a low-level race. So, Lin Feng's behavior was something that Jean Wusher absolutely could not tolerate. Kid, who do you think you are? How dare you make irresponsible remarks here? Jean Wusher looked at Lin Feng indifferently. In his eyes, Lin Feng was no different from a dead man. Jean Wusher raised his right hand. A palm struck towards Lin Feng. That terrifying palm formed a powerful palm wind that directly enveloped Lin Feng. Chapter 5107. That kid has angered Jean Wusher. He's dead for sure. Some cultivators exclaimed when they saw Jean Wusher attack. Other than Little Peng Emperor and the others, almost everyone thought that Lin Feng was dead for sure. Taking the attack of a Tao Immortal expert like Jean Wusher, it was indeed something that made people feel despair. Jean Wusher's punch was about to reach Lin Feng's body, but at that moment, everybody saw that Lin Feng had suddenly attacked. The moment Lin Feng attacked, many people couldn't help but have a thought. Facing the attack of an expert like Jean Wusher, how could Lin Feng still attack? It was truly a little inconceivable. Everyone's thoughts had yet to dissipate. In the next moment, Lin Feng and Jean Wusher collided. Bang! Accompanied by the violent sound of collision. Everyone saw Lin Feng and Jean Wusher. They were actually evenly matched. Both sides took 3 steps back. Everyone's face couldn't help but reveal an expression as if they had seen a ghost. Because Lin Feng, such a young cultivator, was actually able to take on a powerful existence like Jin Wushi without being defeated. Wasn't this too unbelievable? How was this possible? This was the thought that appeared in every cultivator's mind. Who exactly are you? Jin Wushi's face revealed a solemn expression. Such a young cultivator was actually able to take on a palm strike without being defeated. What kind of cultivation did he have to be able to do this? But the key point was that Lin Feng was too young. He was a little too young. You don't need to know who I am. I'll give Dapeng Demon God face, and won't lower myself to your level today. You can leave now. Lin Feng said indifferently. After hearing Lin Feng's words, Jin Wushi's mouth couldn't help but twitch violently, because Lin Feng's words were filled with disdain towards him. This infuriated Jin Wushi. He naturally wouldn't retreat just like that. Although Lin Feng's combat power was extraordinary, Jin Wushi wasn't necessarily afraid of Lin Feng. This was because Jin Wushi's cultivation was also very strong. In addition to his own cultivation, Jin Wushi's accumulation was also very strong. His battle experience was also very rich. In Jin Wushi's opinion, the reason why Lin Feng was able to display such strength was not because of Lin Feng's own strength. It was very likely that Lin Feng had used some kind of powerful treasure to display such strength. It was mainly because Lin Feng was too young. Therefore, it was hard for people to believe that he had such combat strength. One had to know. Even the Undying Realm's 8 young masters were much older than Lin Feng. Since Lin Feng had relied on a magic treasure to have such strength, then it was nothing at all. Because to activate such a magic treasure, the consumption of magic power would definitely be incomparably shocking. From Jin Wushi's point of view, Lin Feng wouldn't be able to hold on for too long. Jin Wushi sneered and said, "Kid, you're just a young human cultivator, yet you dare to be so arrogant in my demon clan's ancestral land. Who gave you such guts? Don't you know that there's always someone better than you?" Said Lin Feng. "There's always someone stronger than you. You should be happy that you're in the ancestral land of the animal clan. If you were in the outside world, you'd be a dead man already," said Lin Feng. Many people exclaimed because Lin Feng's words were really arrogant. It was as if he didn't put Jin Wushi in his eyes at all. This made everyone couldn't help but reveal a wry smile. Jin Wushi was such a strong existence, but in Lin Feng's eyes, was he really so unbearable? In fact, many people thought that Lin Feng had relied on some powerful magic treasure or some special method to increase his battle strength, but after all, this wasn't his own strength. Therefore, if he thought that he could rely on these methods to show off in front of Jin Wushi, then he was gravely mistaken. A Tao Immortal's dignity was absolutely not to be violated, and a Tao Immortal's cultivation level was not something that could be resisted by relying on magic treasures or special methods. Even if you could resist for a short period of time, how long would you be able to hold on in a real battle? When the time came, you would still end up in a rather miserable state. Jin Wushi was so angry that he laughed and said, "What kind of genius haven't I seen before? But it's really the first time I've seen someone as arrogant as you. Today, I'll let you know that if you want to rely on external strength to fight against a Tao Immortal, it's simply a fool's dream. Don't worry, I won't kill you, but I will take away your magic treasure. With your cultivation level, such a powerful magic treasure won't do you any good, so I'll keep it for you for a while." Jin Wushi was definitely a hypocrite. He always liked to find excuses for the things he did. After Jin Wushi finished speaking, he walked towards Lin Feng. A powerful spiritual energy surged out of his palm, and that spiritual energy instantly transformed into an ancient sacred mountain. Jin Wushi flipped his hand, and that sacred mountain flew out and suppressed Lin Feng. This sacred art was called the Sacred Mountain in the palm, and it was a type of suppressive sacred art. In the hands of a strong cultivator like Jean Wusher, this sacred art displayed a terrifying power. Stupid and ignorant. Facing Jean Wusher's attack, Lin Feng said coldly. He only said 5 words, but when everyone heard Lin Feng's words, they all laughed bitterly. Until now, Lin Feng still didn't know the difference between him and Jean Wusher. He was still so contemptuous and disdainful towards Jean Wusher. He was too arrogant. In many people's eyes, Lin Feng was an arrogant person who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth just because he had some strength. And such a person, if he didn't meet a top expert, he would naturally be safe and sound. And if he acted tough, no one would be able to do anything to him. If he met a top expert, he would kick an iron plate. For example, now that Lin Feng had kicked an iron plate, one could imagine how miserable his ending would be. At this moment, Lin Feng's hands formed a seal, and he displayed the sacred art, emptiness of all ages. This sacred art, as a top sacred art of the human race in the previous era, it was naturally extremely powerful. After Lin Feng displayed this sacred art, a terrifying power that spanned across time and space surged out from the void. That terrifying power seemed to be able to shatter the heavens and 10,000 worlds. That terrifying power collided with Jean Wusher's attack. The sacred mountain that Jean Wusher condensed was instantly destroyed. Next, that terrifying power struck Jean Wusher's body, and Jean Wusher was instantly sent flying. Wow! In midair, Jean Wusher couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Chapter 5108. Everyone was dumbfounded. The Tao immortal realm expert Jean Wusher. He was actually sent flying by a young cultivator. Many people even thought that this was a dream and then asked their friends to slap them awake. But when their friends slapped them, those cultivators were dizzy and blood flowed out of their mouths. Who asked cultivators to be so strong? The power of a casual slap was not to be underestimated. So, those cultivators who were slapped all looked pitiful and then started to fight with their friends. As they fought, they scolded their friends for slapping them with such strength. Was he trying to use his power to avenge a personal grudge? But more people looked at Lin Feng. Shock, disbelief, horror, respect. There were all kinds of gazes, but there was no jealousy. When the gap between two parties was too big, there was no way to be jealous. Usually, when the gap between two parties wasn't too big, the one who was slightly behind would be jealous of the one who was better. This world, it was just so magical. With a plop, Jean Wusher fell to the ground. His hair was disheveled. For a Tao immortal realm expert, he was really in a sorry state. Jean Wusher was a proud person. From the moment he appeared, he had always had a high and mighty attitude. Today, Jean Wusher ended up like this. In his heart, naturally, he couldn't accept it. This is definitely not true. How can I lose to a young human cultivator? Jean Wusher roared in anger. His eyes had turned blood red. Jean Wusher jumped up and pounced towards Lin Feng. He wasn't convinced. How could he possibly lose to a young human cultivator? So, Jean Wusher wanted to regain his face. At this moment, Lin Feng waved his sleeves, and a terrifying power surged out and struck Jean Wusher's body. Jean Wusher, as though he was struck by lightning, he was sent flying again. Wah! Jean Wusher spat out another mouthful of blood. His face became even paler and uglier. Kneel down and talk to me. Lin Feng looked at Jean Wusher indifferently. He waved his hand, and a terrifying power surged out. That power, it headed straight for Jean Wusher. Jean Wusher roared in anger. He began to struggle, but he couldn't break free from Lin Feng's suppression. With a plop, Jean Wusher knelt on the ground. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to tear you into pieces. Jin Wushi roared like a madman. When had he ever been humiliated like this? Surprisingly, he had knelt down in front of so many people, a young human cultivator. Jin Wushi ground his teeth. He hated Lin Feng so much that even the water of the 5 lakes and 4 oceans couldn't wash away his hatred. And the surrounding cultivators. They were all dumbfounded. Wasn't Lin Feng a bit too strong? Jin Wushi was a Tao immortal expert. Moreover, this was the ancestral land of the demon race. He actually asked Jin Wushi to kneel. He was unimaginably strong. Wasn't he afraid of offending the number 1 ancestral land of the demon race? But thinking about how Lin Feng was so young and so strong, he must have something to rely on. Otherwise, he wouldn't dare to be so bold. Who is this young master? He's too strong? Someone said. They were extremely curious about Lin Feng's identity. To be so strong, it means that his bloodline must be terrifying. I wonder which human race he is from. Someone continued. The human race was once glorious. 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. Human demon, human ancestor, and other experts. They were all peak existences in the history of the human race. There were also many innate humans. Although it had declined, it had once flourished for a period of time. Perhaps Lin Feng was a top genius at that time. He sealed himself in the divine stone. Now that he was born, many people felt that there was a possibility, or else. It was hard to explain how Lin Feng could be so strong at such a young age. If it was someone from this era, it would be very difficult to have such battle strength at his age. One had to know. The 8 young masters were much older than Lin Feng. Do you really think I don't dare to kill you? Lin Feng put his hands behind his back and looked at Jin Wushi. Everyone felt a little dazed. Everyone felt. The person standing there didn't seem to be a young human cultivator, but a human emperor. He was so strong. His temperament was so extraordinary. Jin Wushi opened his mouth. He wanted to continue cursing Lin Feng, but some words on the tip of his tongue. But he didn't say it, because he really felt it. Lin Feng wanted to kill him, although this was the ancestral land of the demon race. But it was still difficult to intimidate Lin Feng. Kid, no matter who you are, remember this is the ancestral land of the demon race, not a place for you to behave atrociously. At this moment, a cold voice came from the void. Following that, a cultivator stepped out. This was a middle-aged cultivator. He gave off a dignified feeling. This person was called Jin Wuji, and he was also a cultivator of the Great Rock clan. And he was Jin Wushi's cousin. Next, another 6 cultivators stepped out. There were men and women among those cultivators, and they all looked coldly at Lin Feng. There were a total of 7 experts, and they were all true immortals. All these years, there were many powerful experts in the first ancestral land of the demon race. Therefore, Lin Feng wasn't surprised to see so many true immortals appear. And these true immortals were only a portion of the true immortals in the first ancestral land of the demon race. The true immortal expert who spoke was abnormally strong, definitely much stronger than Jin Wushi, who Lin Feng had defeated before. Lin Feng was a little uncertain about this person's realm. After hearing this person's question, Lin Feng said indifferently, "Sir, shouldn't you go and teach Jin Wushi a lesson first? As a Tao immortal expert, this guy actually targeted a young cultivator. It's really too shameless. But this guy is trash. He actually lost to me. In the future, he should stay at home and cultivate in seclusion, so as not to come out and embarrass himself. Kid, you're too arrogant." Jin Wushi was so angry that his whole body trembled. "You're courting death." Jin Wuzhong's face suddenly sank, and then he slapped towards Lin Feng. His body immediately exuded an immortal and indestructible aura. Golden immortal. This person was actually a golden immortal expert. No wonder this person's aura was so terrifying. Lin Feng knew that he wasn't a match for this person, but it wasn't that he didn't have a way to fight against him. Lin Feng planned to join forces with the Demon Lord to resist this person's attack, and then quickly go to the exit with Little Rock King and the others. When they reached the exit, Lin Feng believed that he could successfully break through the restriction and leave with his own methods. Chapter 5109. When he saw this figure, Lin Feng was overjoyed. The Rock King had appeared. The Rock King slapped at Jin Wuzhong. Bang! The sound of a violent collision was heard. The Rock King and Jin Wuzhong collided fiercely. The Rock King was unscathed. Jin Wuzhong was actually forced to retreat. How did you become so strong? Jin Wuzhong looked at the Rock King in disbelief. Lin Feng was also very shocked. The Rock King forced Jin Wuzhong to retreat. It was truly inconceivable, because Jin Wuzhong was a golden immortal expert. It seemed that after the Rock King entered the world of time, reversal, he had obtained great benefits. Lin Feng suddenly thought of his father, Lin Beitian. He had also entered the world of time reversal and soared into the sky. That world was really something to look forward to. The Rock King did not answer Jin Wuzhong's question. Instead, he turned to Lin Feng and smiled. Back in the Tianwu continent, Lin Feng and the Rock King were very close. The Rock King had always treated Lin Feng as his own nephew. Now that he saw Lin Feng again, he was naturally very happy. Senior. Lin Feng cupped his fists and bowed to the Rock King. Okay, you can leave. I will take care of today's matter for you. The Rock King patted Lin Feng's shoulder and said. Lin Feng nodded and left. At this time, Lin Feng realized that the Peacock King was standing beside the Fire Qilin and the others. Lin Feng cupped his fists and bowed to the Peacock King. The Peacock King nodded in agreement. If the demon race can't tolerate us, we can leave today. The Rock King said. Jin Wuzhong sneered and said, You think you can come and go as you please? What do you think the demon race's ancestral land is? And that human brat, he injured Jin Wusher so badly. How can we let him leave like this? If this news spreads, where will the face of the demon race's first ancestral land go? The great Peng Emperor asked, Then what do you plan to do? For your sake, we'll let him cripple his own arm, and we'll forgive him. Jin Wuzhong said. When King Zhan Peng heard Jin Wuzhong, he was so angry that he started laughing. He said, I'm sure you know the whole story better than I do. We're not afraid of you. We just don't want to cause trouble. But we're not afraid of trouble either. If you want to fight, we'll keep you company. Hee, you and your nephew are the same. Both of you are ungrateful wretches. If it weren't for our first ancestral land, if it weren't for the guidance of the 3 Yao gods, do you think you would be so strong right now? Jin Wuzhong said coldly. Actually, this was an equivalent exchange. This was because the great Peng King and Peacock King had offered the extremely precious primal chaos sacred heaven stone to the 3 Yao gods. Or else, would the 3 Yao gods care about the great Peng King and the others? Of course not. However, the great Rock King did not want to find excuses for anything. So, the great Peng King didn't refute Jin Wuzhong's words. He said, There are some things I don't want to explain, and I don't want to talk too much about. The 3 ancient ferocious beasts have taught me a lot, and I will never forget the kindness of the Peacock King. Now, our relationship with the first ancestral land of the demonic beasts has come to an end. Even though we won't have anything to do with the first ancestral land of the demonic beasts anymore. If the first ancestral land of the demonic beasts needs our help, we won't refuse. Ha 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 ha, what a joke. With the 3 Yao gods, what can the first ancestral land not solve? King Zhanpeng, if you don't pay a price today, you won't be able to leave smoothly. Jin Wuzhong laughed loudly. The Peacock King said, King Zhanpeng, it seems like this battle is unavoidable. The Great Peng King nodded and said, Then let's fight. Jin Wuzhong knew that the Great Peng King was very strong, so he did not choose to fight alone. He chose to join forces with the other 6. The other 6 experts. Their cultivation levels were unfathomable. There was 1 golden immortal and 5 quasi-gold immortals. These people, they were the absolute elites of the first ancestral land. The 7 experts joined forces to fight the Great Peng King. After seeing this, the spectators felt that it was inconceivable. The Great Peng King and the others had come from the mortal world. Moreover, they had only been in the undying realm for about 150 years. When the Great Peng King first came to the undying realm, he had just broken through to the earth immortal realm. He was only at the 3rd firmament of the false immortal realm. Now, he could already fight against a golden immortal. Countless outstanding cultivators throughout the ages might not be able to complete such a transformation even if they spent their entire lives trying. However, the Great Rock King had completed such a transformation in a short 150 years. It was truly inconceivable and shocking. Rise and fall of ages. Yao gods descend. Lord of myriad Yao. Lu Zhan Zhouqian. Finger-slaying immortals. Invincible 10 directions. Sweeping through the ages. The 7 experts of the Yao gods. One after another, they unleashed extremely terrifying divine abilities. Every single one of the divine abilities exuded a suffocating pressure. Even the cultivators who were far away felt their souls trembling when they felt the attacks from the experts of the 7 major demon clans. They felt as if they were nothing more than ants. Although the Great Peng King is very powerful now, I'm afraid that even the Great Peng King won't be able to withstand the combined attacks of the 7 great experts. At this time, a cultivator couldn't help but exclaim. Many people nodded. Obviously, they agreed with this cultivator's words. The Great Peng King was indeed very strong. But the 7 great experts were even stronger. The Great Peng King was fighting against 7 alone. He was at a disadvantage. Therefore, in the eyes of many people, in this battle, there was no suspense at all. The Great Peng King would definitely lose. Just as the attacks of the 7 great experts of the demon clan were about to hit the Great Peng King, the Great Peng King suddenly moved, demons wreaking havoc in the heavens. The Great Peng King spoke. He took a step forward. Behind him, billions of space-time appeared. The billions of space-time seemed to have merged with the Great Peng King. The Great Peng King waved his hand. A terrifying power that was almost indescribable, with words instantly surged out from the Great Peng King's palm. That terrifying power surged towards the 7 great experts of the demon clan. The attacks of the 7 great experts of the demon clan were instantly broken. Then, the 7 great experts of the demon clan were sent flying. Suppress. The Great Peng King raised his hand and condensed the word suppress. This was the use of the great suppression technique. The word suppress turned into countless runes and suppressed the 7 great experts of the demon clan. Plop, 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 plop.